Welcome, dear traveler. Settle in. Breathe. Let the world outside grow distant and quiet. Tonight I will tell you a story of monsters, but not the kind you think. Tonight I will tell you a story of lightning and ice, of forbidden knowledge and terrible loneliness, of a creature stitched together from death, who learned what it meant to be alive. This is one of the most haunting stories ever written. This is Frankenstein. Close your eyes. The tale is about to begin. Chapter 1. A world on the edge of wonder. There was a time when the world stood trembling on the edge of transformation. A time when the old ways were crumbling like ancient stone, and new ideas blazed across Europe like fire across dry grassland. This was the age of enlightenment, the age of reason, the age of science. And it was in this age that our story takes root. Picture it now, if you will. Let the images form slowly in your mind, like shapes emerging from morning fog. Let them take color and substance as I describe them to you. Europe in the late 18th century was a tapestry of contrasts. Great cities rose along rivers and coastlines, their streets alive with commerce and culture, their universities humming with new ideas. Paris, London, Vienna, Geneva. Each was a center of learning, of art, of philosophy. Men and women gathered in salons and coffee houses to debate the nature of reality, the rights of humanity, the very meaning of existence. But beyond the cities, the old world still held sway. Vast forests stretched across the continent, dark and trackless, home to wolves and bears and older things that had no names. Mountains rose like the bones of ancient giants, their peaks crowned with eternal snow, their valleys shrouded in mist. Peasants in remote villages still whispered of witches and demons, still nailed horseshoes above their doors for protection, still crossed themselves when thunder rolled across the sky. It was a world caught between two ages, between superstition and science, between fear and understanding, between darkness and light. And in that space between, in that narrow gap where the impossible suddenly seemed possible, extraordinary things could happen. The scientists of this age were not like the scientists of today, dear listener. They were dreamers and alchemists, philosophers and poets. They believed that the secrets of the universe were waiting to be unlocked, that nature's deepest mysteries would yield to patient inquiry and bold experimentation. They called themselves natural philosophers, and they pursued knowledge with a passion that bordered on obsession. Some sought to understand the motion of the planets, tracing their arcs across the night sky, calculating their orbits with ever greater precision. Others delved into the structure of matter, breaking apart compounds to discover the elements that composed them. Still others turned their attention to the phenomenon of life itself, asking the most dangerous question of all. What animates the living? What separates the quick from the dead? What secret force flows through mortal flesh, turning inert matter into thinking, feeling, breathing beings? This question haunted the age. It whispered from the pages of scientific journals and philosophical treatises. It lurked behind every dissection, every experiment, every midnight discussion in candlelit laboratories. The boundary between life and death seemed suddenly permeable, as if one might reach across it with the right knowledge, the right tools, the right daring. Electricity had been discovered, that mysterious fluid that sparked and crackled and made dead frog legs twitch as if alive. Some scientists believed it was the very essence of vitality. the spark that animated all living things. If electricity could make dead tissue move, then perhaps, it could restore life to the lifeless. Perhaps the dead could be made to walk again. This was the world into which Victor Frankenstein was born. The city of Geneva sits at the western end of a lake so vast and so beautiful that travelers who see it for the first time often weep with joy. Lake Geneva, the French call it. Lac Léman, say the Swiss. Its waters are a deep and luminous blue, reflecting the sky above and the mountains that rise on every side. On clear days, you can see all the way to the bottom in the shallows, where fish drift lazily among the stones. On stormy days, the surface churns with whitecaps, and waves crash against the stone quays like the fists of angry gods. The city itself clings to the lake's edge, its old quarters a maze of narrow streets and ancient buildings, its newer districts elegant with fine houses and formal gardens. Church spires pierce the sky. The great fountain, the Jet d'eau, sends a column of water hundreds of feet into the air, catching the light like a tower of diamonds. And beyond the city, rising in the distance like a wall against the heavens, stand the Alps. The Alps, dear listener. Even the name carries magic. These were the mightiest mountains in Europe, a seemingly endless chain of peaks and glaciers stretching from France to Austria. Their summits were crowned with eternal snow. Their slopes were draped with forests of pine and fir. Their valleys held tiny villages where time seemed to stand still, where farmers worked the same fields their ancestors had worked for 1,000 years. In winter, the Alps were deadly. Avalanches roared down their flanks, burying everything in their path. Blizzards howled through the passes, trapping travelers, claiming lives. The cold was so intense that a man could freeze to death in minutes if he lost his way. But in summer, the Alps were paradise. Wildflowers carpeted the meadows in every color imaginable. Glacial streams tumbled down the mountainsides, their waters so pure and cold that drinking them felt like swallowing liquid crystal. Chamois bounded among the crags. Eagles circled in the impossibly blue sky. And the light was unlike anything found in the lowlands. It was clearer, sharper, more intense, as if the very air had been polished to brilliance. It was in this place, in this city, in this landscape of extraordinary beauty and hidden terror, that the Frankenstein family made their home. The Frankensteins were wealthy, aristocratic, respected. Alphonse Frankenstein, the patriarch, was a man of stern virtue and gentle heart, a retired magistrate who had spent his career administering justice with fairness and wisdom. His wife, Caroline, had been born to nobility but orphaned young, and Alphonse had rescued her from poverty after her father's death. Their marriage was one of deep and genuine love, a partnership of equals in an age when such things were rare. They had 3 sons. Ernest, the middle child, was quiet and thoughtful, content to remain in the shadow of his brothers. William, the youngest, was a beautiful child with golden curls and laughing eyes, the darling of the entire household. And Victor, the eldest, was extraordinary from the very beginning. Let me tell you about Victor. He was born on a winter's night when the wind howled off the lake and snow piled against the windows. The birth was difficult, and for hours the doctors feared they would lose both mother and child. But Caroline was strong, and Victor was determined. And when the dawn finally broke, the baby's first cry echoed through the great house like a declaration of war against death itself. From his earliest days, Victor was different. He walked before other children his age. He spoke in complete sentences before his second birthday. He asked questions that made adults uncomfortable, questions about where people went when they died, about what made the heart beat, about why some creatures lived and others did not. He was not content with simple answers. He wanted to understand everything. His eyes were large and dark and penetrating, the color of storm clouds over the mountains. When he fixed those eyes upon you, it felt as if he was seeing past your skin and bone into the very essence of your being. Some found this unsettling. Others found it fascinating. No one found it ordinary. Victor's childhood was happy, by all accounts. He was loved by his parents, adored by his brothers, cherished by the servants who tended to the great house. He wanted for nothing. His days were filled with tutors and books, with excursions into the mountains, with games in the family garden where ancient trees spread their branches over velvet lawns. But even in those early years, something in Victor yearned for more. He would spend hours in his father's library, a vast room lined with leather-bound volumes that rose from floor to ceiling. He devoured books on every subject: history and philosophy, poetry and mathematics, astronomy and anatomy. Each book opened new doors, new worlds, new questions. And always, one question drove him more than any other. What is the nature of life? He remembers, for Victor would later write down his memories in letters and journals, and it is from these that I tell you his story. He remembers a day in his 9th year when he found a dead bird in the garden. It was a sparrow, small and brown, and utterly still. It lay on the flagstones beneath a window, its neck twisted at an unnatural angle, its tiny eyes glazed and empty. Victor picked it up and held it in his hands, feeling the weight of it, the strange lightness that death brings to living things. He examined the bird with the focus of a surgeon. He spread its wings and studied the arrangement of feathers. He opened its beak and looked inside. He pressed his ear against its breast, listening for a heartbeat that was not there. And finally, in a moment of childish curiosity that he would remember for the rest of his life, he pressed his thumb against the bird's chest and tried to restart its heart.
Nothing happened, of course. The bird remained dead. But something in Victor's mind shifted, clicked, realigned itself around a new and terrible purpose. Death, he realized, was a problem, and problems were meant to be solved. He buried the sparrow beneath a rose bush in the garden, marking the spot with a small stone. But as he walked back toward the house, his young mind was already racing. What had made the bird alive in the first place? What force had animated its tiny heart, powered its wings, sparked the fire of consciousness behind those dark eyes? And when death came, where did that force go? Was it truly gone? Or was it merely elsewhere? These questions would haunt Victor for the rest of his life. They would drive him to brilliance and madness. They would lead him to discover the secret of life itself. And they would ultimately destroy everything he loved. But that was still far in the future. For now, Victor was simply a bright and curious child, growing up in a paradise of mountains and blue water, surrounded by love and beauty and wonder. Let us linger in this paradise for a moment, dear listener, before the shadows arrive.
The Frankenstein household was completed by 2 more souls, each of whom would play a crucial role in the tragedy to come. The first was Elizabeth Lavenza. Elizabeth came to the Frankensteins when Victor was 5 years old. Her story was a sad one, common enough in that age of high mortality and casual cruelty. She had been born to a noble Italian family, her mother a beautiful German woman who had died giving her life. Her father, a political exile, had been unable to care for her. She was given to a peasant family who loved her, but could not afford to raise her properly. Caroline Frankenstein discovered her during a charitable visit to the poor villages outside Geneva. Elizabeth was sitting in the doorway of a cottage, her golden hair dirty and tangled, her fine features smudged with soot, but even through the poverty and the grime, her beauty shone like a beacon. She was, Caroline later said, like a pearl found in an oyster shell. Caroline brought her home. From the moment Victor saw Elizabeth, he was enchanted. She was delicate where he was intense, gentle where he was passionate, steady where he was restless. She had a way of calming him, of drawing him out of the dark corridors of his own mind and into the warmth of human connection. They became inseparable, sharing lessons and games, exploring the gardens and meadows together, growing from childhood friends into something deeper. Victor's mother, with the casual certainty of a woman of her age and station, presented Elizabeth to her son as his future bride. This was how things were done among the wealthy families of Europe. Marriages were arranged early, partnerships planned before the children themselves understood what partnership meant. Victor, for his part, accepted this arrangement without question. Elizabeth was his. She always would be. They called her their cousin, though she was not related by blood. She called Victor her dearest friend, her brother in all but name, her future husband. The love between them was real, deep, and as far as either of them understood, eternal. The second soul to complete the household was Henry Clerval. Henry was not a Frankenstein, but he might as well have been. His father was a merchant in Geneva, a practical man with no patience for art or poetry or any of the finer things that stirred his son's heart. Henry, by contrast, was a dreamer. He wrote plays and poems. He lost himself in tales of knights and quests and noble sacrifice. He wanted to be a hero, a scholar, a traveler to distant lands. He and Victor met as children and became fast friends, drawn together by the intensity of their imaginations, the scope of their dreams. Where Victor sought to understand the secrets of nature, Henry sought to understand the secrets of the human heart. Where Victor dissected birds and studied anatomy texts, Henry read Homer and Shakespeare and wept at the beauty of their words. They balanced each other perfectly. Henry was the sunshine to Victor's storm, the laughter to his brooding, the warmth to his cold fire. Without Henry, Victor might have lost himself entirely in the darkness of his obsessions. With Henry beside him, he remembered what it meant to be human. Together with Elizabeth, they formed a trinity of youth and promise. Three brilliant souls, bound together by love and circumstance, innocent of the horrors that awaited them. But innocence, dear listener, never lasts. Let us pause again. Feel your body sinking deeper into comfort. Feel your breath slowing, steadying, finding its natural rhythm. The night is deep around you. The silence is soft. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. The story will continue. I will guide you through it. All you need to do is listen. All you need to do is breathe. All you need to do is drift. Good. Now, let me tell you about the books. When Victor was 13 years old, his family traveled to a small town near the German border. They were staying at an inn while waiting for a storm to pass, and Victor, bored and restless, wandered through the common rooms looking for something to occupy his mind. He found a book. It was an old volume, water-stained and dog-eared, lying on a table where some previous guest had abandoned it. Victor picked it up without expectation, opened it without curiosity, and found himself staring at the work of Cornelius Agrippa. Cornelius Agrippa was an alchemist, a philosopher, a mystic. He had lived 2 centuries before Victor's time, and his writings were considered obsolete by the scientists of the Enlightenment. They spoke of elixirs of life and philosopher's stones, of transmuting base metals into gold, of unlocking the hidden powers of nature through arcane rituals and forbidden knowledge. Victor should have tossed the book aside. It was outdated, unscientific, the product of a superstitious age that the modern world had outgrown. Any reasonable person would have dismissed it as nonsense. Victor was not reasonable. He devoured the book. He found more works by similar authors, Paracelsus, Albertus Magnus, other explorers of the hidden territories where science blurred into magic. He read them with the hunger of a starving man, ignoring the warnings of his father, who told him the books were rubbish, ignoring the skepticism of his tutors, who told him the authors had been disproven centuries ago. Victor did not care about disproof. He cared about the questions these ancient philosophers asked, the doors they tried to open, the darkness they were willing to explore. Where modern scientists asked how nature worked, the alchemists asked how nature might be changed. Where modern scientists sought to understand the laws of the universe, the alchemists sought to break them. This was what Victor wanted, not understanding. Transformation. He began to dream of impossible things. He dreamed of creating an elixir that would cure all disease. He dreamed of discovering a formula that would grant eternal life. He dreamed of penetrating the veil between the living and the dead, of reaching into death's kingdom and bringing back what death had taken.
These dreams consumed him. They burned in his mind like fever. They drove him to neglect his other studies, his friends, his family. He became pale and thin, spending his nights poring over ancient texts by candlelight, filling notebooks with wild speculations and stranger equations. His parents worried. Elizabeth worried. Henry worried. But Victor dismissed their concerns. He was on the verge of something magnificent. He was close to understanding secrets that had eluded humanity since the beginning of time. He could not stop now. He would not stop. And then, in his 17th year, two things happened that would change Victor's life forever. The first was a storm. It was summer, the kind of hot and heavy summer that builds toward catastrophe. For days, the air over Geneva had been thick and still, pressing down on the city like a weight. The lake lay flat as glass. No wind stirred the trees. Animals grew restless, sensing what was coming. And Victor, who had been shut up in his study for weeks, finally emerged to watch what promised to be an extraordinary display. The storm arrived at sunset. It came from the mountains, rolling down from the Alps like an invading army. The sky turned black. Lightning flickered in the depths of the clouds. Thunder rumbled, soft at first, then louder still, until it seemed the very foundations of the world were shaking. Victor stood at the window of his father's house and watched the storm approach. The lightning was magnificent. It split the darkness in great branching rivers of light, illuminating the landscape in frozen instants of brilliance. Mountains leaped into view, then vanished. The lake became a plain of silver fire. The trees bent and thrashed in the rising wind. And then, directly before Victor's eyes, lightning struck an oak tree in the garden. The tree was ancient, enormous, a patriarch that had stood in that spot for perhaps 400 years. Victor had played beneath its branches as a child. He had climbed its trunk. He had read in its shade on summer afternoons while Elizabeth laughed and Henry read poetry aloud. The lightning destroyed it in an instant. Not destroyed. Unmade. The bolt struck the tree at its crown and ran down through its trunk in a river of white fire. The wood exploded. Splinters flew in every direction. The air filled with the smell of burning and ozone. And when Victor's eyes recovered from the flash, when he could see again through the afterimages burned into his retinas, the tree was gone. Not a stump remained. Not a branch. Nothing but a scorch mark on the ground where the tree had stood for centuries. Victor stared at that empty space for a long time. The sheer power of it, the absolute, terrifying, magnificent power. A living thing, older than his grandfather's grandfather, reduced to nothing in a fraction of a second. By what? By electricity. By the same mysterious fluid that scientists were only beginning to understand. By the raw force of nature, channeled and concentrated and unleashed. If electricity could destroy so utterly, Victor thought, could it also create? If that force could end life so instantaneously, could it also begin it? A new direction began to take shape in Victor's mind. The old alchemists had been fools, he realized. They had tried to find life's secrets in potions and incantations, in mystical formulas and arcane symbols. They had been looking in the wrong places. The secret of life was not magical. It was electrical. It was scientific. It was waiting to be discovered by someone with the courage to look for it. Victor would be that someone. The second event happened 3 years later. Victor was 17 when his mother fell ill. It began simply enough. Elizabeth had contracted scarlet fever, a disease that was common in that age and often fatal, especially to the young. Caroline Frankenstein, devoted mother that she was, insisted on nursing Elizabeth herself. She sat at the girl's bedside for days, cooling her fevered brow, spooning broth between her parched lips, reading to her through the long and terrible nights. Elizabeth recovered. Caroline did not. The disease that had only weakened her adopted daughter killed Caroline Frankenstein within 2 weeks of Elizabeth's recovery. Victor watched his mother waste away before his eyes. He watched the fever climb, the delirium deepen, the life drain out of her beloved face. He watched the doctors shake their heads and speak in hushed voices of resignation and God's will. He watched his mother die. At the end, when death was very close, Caroline gathered Victor and Elizabeth to her bedside. Her voice was a whisper, her hand cold and weak in Victor's grip. "My children," she said. "My dear, dear children. Promise me you will look after each other. Promise me you will be happy. Promise me you will marry and love each other and fill this house with children of your own. Promise me." They promised. Through their tears, through the breaking of their hearts, they promised. And then Caroline Frankenstein closed her eyes and did not open them again. Grief, dear listener, takes different forms in different souls. Elizabeth wept. She wore black for months. She visited Caroline's grave every day, leaving flowers and prayers and whispered conversations with the woman who had been more than a mother to her. Alphonse withdrew into himself. He became quieter, older, smaller somehow, as if part of his own life had been buried with his wife. Victor did not weep. Victor did not withdraw. Victor became angry. Death had taken his mother. Death, that mindless, purposeless, invincible enemy. Death, against which all human achievement was ultimately meaningless. What good were all his studies, all his dreams, all his desperate searching for life's secret if he could not save the woman who had given him life? Victor stood at his mother's grave and made a silent vow. He would defeat death. He would discover the secret of animation. He would learn to create life from lifelessness, to restore the spark that death extinguished. And when he had done that, when he had unlocked the greatest mystery in the universe, he would never have to feel this helpless again. No one else would ever have to feel this helpless. He would conquer death, not for glory, not for fame, not for any reason except this. He would not allow death to take anyone else he loved. It was a noble goal in its way, a beautiful ambition, born from love and grief and the best intentions a human heart could hold. But the road to hell, dear listener, is paved with good intentions, and Victor Frankenstein was about to set foot on that road. Chapter 2. the University of Ingolstadt. Shortly after his mother's death, Victor left Geneva. His destination was Ingolstadt, a city in Bavaria where one of Europe's finest universities stood. He would study natural philosophy there, immersing himself in the modern sciences that he had previously scorned. The old alchemists had failed because they lacked method, lacked rigor, lacked the tools that the Enlightenment had provided. Victor would not make their mistakes. He would approach the mystery of life with all the discipline and precision of a modern scientist. And he would succeed where they had failed. The journey from Geneva to Ingolstadt took several weeks by coach. Victor traveled through some of the most beautiful landscapes in Europe, but he barely noticed. His mind was already at the university, already in the laboratory, already probing the secrets that waited for him there. Elizabeth and Henry accompanied him to the edge of the city, saying their farewells at a crossroads where the coach would carry Victor away and they would return home. Elizabeth wept. She pressed a small portrait of herself into Victor's hands, a miniature painting that showed her gentle face framed by golden curls. "Remember me," she said. "Remember that I am waiting for you. Remember that my heart belongs to you and no other." Victor embraced her. He felt her warmth, her softness, the trembling of her shoulders as she cried. He loved her. He knew he loved her. But even as he held her, part of his mind was already elsewhere, already racing ahead to the discoveries that awaited him. "I will write to you," he promised. "Every week. Every day if I can. And when I have finished my studies, when I have learned everything there is to learn, I will come home. I will marry you. We will be happy." He meant every word. At the time. Henry clasped his hand and looked at him with eyes full of concern. "Do not lose yourself, my friend," Henry said quietly. "Knowledge is valuable, but it is not everything. Do not forget to live while you are learning." Victor nodded, but he did not truly hear. How could Henry understand? How could anyone understand? Victor was on the threshold of greatness. He was going to change the world. He climbed into the coach. He waved goodbye. And as the wheels began to turn, as his friends grew smaller and smaller in the distance, as the mountains of his homeland faded into the haze of the horizon, Victor Frankenstein turned his face toward the future. He did not look back. Ingolstadt was nothing like Geneva. Where Geneva was clean and orderly, surrounded by water and mountains and fresh alpine air, Ingolstadt was crowded and chaotic. A medieval city that had grown haphazardly over centuries, its streets narrow and winding, its buildings pressing close together like conspirators sharing secrets. The university dominated the town, its ancient halls and towers rising above the surrounding houses. Students thronged the streets, young men from every corner of Europe, speaking a dozen languages, pursuing 100 different fields of study. The air hummed with ideas and arguments, with the energy of minds stretching toward the limits of human knowledge. Victor threw himself into this world with something beyond enthusiasm. It was obsession, pure and simple. He attended lectures from dawn until dark. He spent his nights in the library, reading by candlelight until his eyes burned and his head ached. He sought out the greatest professors and demanded their attention, asking questions that made them frown, proposing theories that made them shake their heads. Two professors, in particular, shaped his development. The first was Professor Krempe, a gruff and dismissive man who specialized in natural philosophy. When Victor mentioned his earlier interest in the alchemists, Agrippa, Paracelsus, Albertus Magnus, Krempe laughed in his face. "Those charlatans?" the professor said. "You have been wasting your time, young man. The alchemists knew nothing. They believed in magic and superstition. They accomplished nothing of value. If you wish to pursue science, you must abandon these fantasies and learn the real nature of the world." Victor was offended, but he was also intrigued. Krempe was rude, but he was brilliant. His lectures on physics and chemistry opened new doors in Victor's mind, showing him tools and methods that the alchemists had never possessed. The second professor was very different. Professor Waldman was gentle and thoughtful, a man who spoke of science with the reverence of a priest speaking of God. His lectures on chemistry were legendary, not just for their content, but for the way he presented it. Waldman made science beautiful. He made it noble. He made it seem like the highest calling a human being could pursue. The ancient teachers of this science, Waldman said in one of his first lectures, promised impossibilities and performed nothing. The modern masters promise very little. They know that metals cannot be transmuted and that the elixir of life is a chimera. But these philosophers, whose hands seem made only to dabble in dirt and their eyes to pore over the microscope or crucible, have indeed performed miracles. Victor leaned forward in his seat. They penetrate into the recesses of nature, Waldman continued, and show how she works in her hiding places. They ascend into the heavens. They have discovered how the blood circulates and the nature of the air we breathe. They have acquired new and almost unlimited powers. They can command the thunders of heaven, mimic the earthquake, and even mock the invisible world with its own shadows. Victor's heart was racing now. This was what he had been seeking. Not the mysticism of the alchemists, but not the cold skepticism of Krempe either. Something in between. Something that combined the ambition of the old seekers with the methods of the new. After the lecture, Victor approached Waldman and introduced himself. They talked for hours. They talked about chemistry and philosophy. They talked about the nature of life, about the boundary between the quick and the dead, about the mysteries that still eluded even the most advanced scientists. Victor confessed his dream, to unlock the secret of animation, to understand what force gave life to living things. Waldman listened with interest, but also with caution. "These are profound questions," he said, "and I will not pretend they are unanswerable. But you must understand, Victor, that some answers come at a price. Knowledge is not always kind. Discovery is not always safe. The deeper you dig into nature's secrets, the greater the risk that you will unearth something uncomfortable." "I am not afraid," Victor said. Waldman studied him for a long moment. "No," he said softly, "I can see that you are not. That is what concerns me." For 2 years, Victor devoted himself to conventional studies. He mastered chemistry and physics. He learned anatomy, spending countless hours in the dissecting rooms of the university, cutting apart human cadavers to understand the structure of muscle and bone and organ. He studied physiology, learning how the body's systems worked together, how the heart pumped blood through miles of vessels, how the lungs extracted vital air, how the nerves carried sensation from the fingertips to the brain. He was brilliant. His professors said so. His fellow students regarded him with a mixture of admiration and envy. He published papers that were praised throughout the scientific community. He was on his way to becoming one of the great minds of his generation. But none of it was enough. The conventional sciences could explain how the body worked, but they could not explain why it lived. They could describe the mechanisms of life, but they could not capture its essence. They could catalog the parts of the machine, but they could not identify the spark that made the machine run. Victor wanted that spark. He needed it. Without it, all his knowledge was meaningless. He began to push beyond the boundaries of acceptable research. He visited graveyards at midnight, collecting bones and tissue from the recently dead. He haunted slaughterhouses, studying the transition from life to death in freshly killed animals. He experimented with electricity, applying galvanic currents to dead tissue, watching muscles twitch and limbs jerk as if animated by invisible strings. The experiments were disturbing. They were also promising. Each twitch, each jerk, each momentary semblance of life convinced Victor that he was on the right track. The secret was there, waiting for him, just beyond the edge of what was known. He could almost grasp it. He could almost see it. He just needed to push a little further, dig a little deeper, sacrifice a little more. He stopped attending lectures. He stopped writing to Elizabeth and his family. He stopped eating regular meals, stopped sleeping regular hours. His face grew gaunt and pale. His eyes burned with a fevered intensity that made even his closest acquaintances uncomfortable. But Victor did not care. He was so close. So close. And then, one night in the depths of his third year at Ingolstadt, alone in his laboratory with nothing but his notes and his ambition for company, Victor Frankenstein discovered the secret of life. I will not describe the discovery to you, dear listener, partly because Victor himself never described it in detail, fearful that others might replicate his work and suffer his fate, partly because some knowledge is too dangerous to share, even in a story, even in the safety of night and dreams. But mostly because the discovery itself is less important than what Victor did with it. What matters is this: Victor learned how to animate dead tissue. He discovered the principle that separates the living from the lifeless. He held in his hands, in his mind, the power that humanity had sought since the beginning of time. He could create life. The realization struck him like lightning, like the bolt that had destroyed the oak tree in his father's garden so many years before. He sat in his laboratory, surrounded by his notes and equipment, and he trembled with the enormity of what he had achieved. He was going to be greater than any scientist who had ever lived, greater than Galileo, greater than Newton. He was going to be the master of life and death, the conqueror of mortality, the new Prometheus who would bring fire from the heavens to light the darkness of human ignorance. He was going to create a living being. Victor began immediately. He could not wait. Every moment of delay was a moment wasted. Every hour of rest was an hour that could have been spent working. The excitement consumed him, drove him, left no room for doubt or caution or second thought. He needed materials. Human materials. The components from which he would assemble his creation. This is the part of the story, dear listener, that is hardest to tell. The part that reveals the depth of Victor's obsession, the extent to which he had lost himself in his grand ambition. He gathered his materials from graveyards and charnel houses, from dissecting rooms and slaughterhouses, from any place where the raw stuff of humanity, bones and organs and tissue, could be found. He worked by night, stealing through darkened streets with bags and boxes, collecting the pieces he needed while the world slept. It was grim work. Disturbing work. Work that would have horrified him if he had stopped to think about it, if he had allowed himself a moment of reflection. But Victor did not stop. Victor did not reflect. Victor was beyond such things now, carried forward by a momentum that he could not have resisted even if he had wanted to. And so, night after night, week after week, month after month, Victor assembled his creation. Chapter 3. The Creation. Picture the laboratory, dear listener. Let me paint it for you in words, as Victor saw it during those long and terrible months of work. It was in the attic of the house Victor rented, a cramped and shadowy space beneath the eaves where the ceiling sloped low and the windows were small and grimy. Chemical apparatus lined the walls, retorts and alembics, tubes and jars, a furnace that burned with a sickly yellow flame. Tables were scattered with notes and diagrams, with surgical instruments and electrical machines. And in the center of the room, on a great table that Victor had reinforced to bear its weight, lay the thing he was making. I call it a thing because Victor himself struggled to find the right words. It was human in shape, more or less, but larger, much larger. Victor had chosen to work on a grand scale, partly because smaller components were difficult to manipulate, partly because he wanted his creation to be magnificent, awe-inspiring, a monument to human achievement. But as the weeks passed, as the creature took shape beneath his hands, Victor began to feel something he had not expected. Fear. The creature was not beautiful. Victor had selected the finest specimens he could find. The lustrous hair, the white teeth, the elegant limbs. But when assembled, these components did not create the masterpiece he had envisioned. The skin was yellow and translucent, stretched tight over the muscles and veins beneath. The eyes, which had looked natural enough in their original sockets, seemed watery and strange in the creature's massive skull. The proportions were wrong somehow, disturbing in ways that Victor could not quite articulate. He tried to ignore these doubts. He was too close to stop now. The creature was nearly complete. Soon, he would breathe life into it, and all these imperfections would be forgotten in the glory of that moment. Winter arrived. The days grew short and cold. Ice formed on the inside of Victor's windows. His fire burned constantly, but it could not warm the chill that had settled into his bones, into his soul. He stopped eating almost entirely. He slept only when his body collapsed from exhaustion, and even then, his sleep was shallow and haunted by dreams. He did not write to Elizabeth or his family. He did not see his professors or his fellow students. He existed in a world of his own, a world of chemicals and electricity and dead flesh, a world that had shrunk to the dimensions of his attic laboratory. His health began to fail. His hands trembled. His vision blurred. He caught sight of himself in a mirror one day and was shocked by what he saw, a skeleton wrapped in skin, with hollow cheeks and burning eyes, a face that might have belonged to a corpse itself. But he was so close. So close. On a night in November, with rain beating against the windows and lightning flickering in the distance, Victor Frankenstein finished his work. The creature lay on the table, complete at last. 8 feet of assembled humanity, stitched and wired and prepared for the moment that would change everything. Victor stood over it, trembling with exhaustion and anticipation. In his hands he held the final apparatus, the culmination of years of research and months of desperate labor. The electricity was gathered. The chemicals were prepared. Everything was ready. He did not hesitate. He could not have hesitated even if he had wanted to. He activated the apparatus. What happened next, Victor could never quite explain. There was light, brilliant and blind. There was heat, intense enough to sear the air. There was sound, a crackle and a roar, like thunder concentrated into a single instant. And then there was movement. The creature's chest rose. Air rushed into lungs that had never breathed before. The yellow eyelids trembled, then slowly, impossibly, opened. Victor stared into the eyes of his creation. They were watery and pale, the color of old milk, but they were alive. They were looking at him. They were seeing him. The creature's lips parted. A sound emerged, something between a moan and a sigh, the first vocalization of a being that had not existed a moment before. Victor had done it. He had created life. And in that instant of triumph, that moment he had worked toward for years, Victor Frankenstein felt nothing but horror. Let me try to explain, dear listener. Victor had expected to feel triumph, joy, the pride of a creator surveying his masterwork. He had expected to look upon his creation and see in it the fulfillment of all his dreams, the vindication of all his sacrifices. Instead, he saw only the nightmare he had made. The creature was hideous. Not just unattractive, not just strange, but deeply, viscerally wrong. Its yellow skin barely concealed the muscles and veins beneath. Its proportions were inhuman, its features a mockery of normal anatomy. Its eyes, alive now and moving, seemed to accuse Victor of something he could not name. But there was more than ugliness here. There was something that struck at the root of Victor's sanity. This was not how it was supposed to be. He had imagined creating a new race, beautiful and grateful, that would bless him as its author. He had imagined being a god, worshipped by beings of his own design. He had imagined light and glory and the adoration of all humanity. Instead, he had made a monster. Victor stumbled backward, his hand rising to his mouth as if to hold back a scream. The creature reached toward him, its lips moving in an attempt at speech, its eyes filled with something that might have been confusion or pleading or simple awareness. Victor could not bear it. He could not bear the sight of what he had done, the weight of what he had created. His mind, already weakened by months of obsessive work, simply refused to cope with the reality before him. He fled. He threw open the door of his laboratory and ran down the stairs, through the house, out into the rain-soaked streets of Ingolstadt. He ran without direction, without purpose, driven only by the overwhelming need to be away from the thing in his attic. He ran until he could run no more. Then he stood in the empty street, rain streaming down his face, and he waited for his heart to stop pounding, for his breath to slow, for the panic to subside. It did not subside. Not entirely. Victor spent the rest of that night wandering the city, unable to return to his lodgings, unable to face what waited there. The rain soaked him to the bone. The cold numbed his fingers and toes. But he barely noticed. His mind was a chaos of horror and disbelief, replaying the moment of creation over and over, seeing those pale eyes open, seeing that massive body stir with impossible life. "What have I done?" he whispered to himself. "Dear God, what have I done?" When dawn finally came, gray and wet and utterly without comfort, Victor found himself near the university. By some miracle, he encountered his old friend Henry Clerval. Henry had just arrived in Ingolstadt, sent by his father to study at the university. He was full of joy and excitement, eager to see his dearest friend, to share his happiness at finally pursuing his dreams. He found Victor standing in the street like a madman, wild-eyed and shaking, drenched to the skin and half dead with cold. "Victor," Henry cried, "my God, what has happened to you?" Victor could not answer. He could not form words. He could only stare at his friend and tremble, his lips working soundlessly, his hands clawing at the air. Henry took him back to his lodgings. Victor resisted at first, terrified of what they might find there. But when they arrived, when Victor forced himself to look through the door of his laboratory, the creature was gone. The table where it had lain was empty. The apparatus had been knocked aside. A window stood open, letting in the cold morning air. The creature had escaped. Victor's mind could not process this new horror. Relief that the thing was gone warred with terror at what it might be doing, where it might be going, who it might encounter. His thoughts spun in circles, faster and faster, until finally his body gave out. He collapsed. For months afterward, Victor lay in a fever, delirious and raving. Henry nursed him with devoted care, never understanding what had caused his friend's breakdown, never learning the truth of what Victor had created. Victor spoke in his delirium, but his words were fragmented, meaningless, the ravings of a shattered mind. He saw the creature in his fever dreams. He saw it looming over him, reaching for him, its pale eyes filled with reproach. He screamed and fought against invisible hands, begging for mercy, begging for death, begging for anything that would end the nightmare. But the nightmare would not end. It was only beginning. Chapter 4. The Creature Wakes. Now, dear listener, we must shift our perspective. We have been following Victor, the creator, the man whose ambition brought forth something never before seen on this earth. But to understand this story fully, we must also follow the creature, the created, the being whose existence raises the oldest and most troubling questions of all. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be human? What do we owe to those we bring into the world? Let me take you back to that night in November, to the moment of awakening, and let me show you what the creature experienced as it opened its eyes for the first time. Consciousness comes like sunrise over a dark horizon. First, there is nothing, an absence so complete that it cannot even be called darkness, for darkness implies the possibility of light. An emptiness so profound that it contains not even the memory of something more. And then, sensation. Dim and distant, like sound heard underwater. Pressure. Warmth. A strange heaviness that might be weight, might be gravity, might be the simple fact of having a body. The first thought, if it can be called a thought, is simply this: I am. No context. No history. No understanding of what I means or what am implies. Just the raw, undeniable fact of existence. Something is present. Something is aware. Something is experiencing, however dimly, the first moments of its being. Light comes next. It is blinding, overwhelming, a flood of sensation that the newly formed brain cannot process. The eyes close reflexively, then open again, struggling to make sense of the chaos of color and shape that pours into them. A room. The creature does not know this word, does not know any words, but it perceives a space. Walls, ceiling, objects scattered across surfaces. A window through which gray light struggles to enter. And a figure. A man, standing nearby, staring with an expression that the creature cannot yet interpret. Fear. The creature does not know this word either, but it recognizes the emotion instinctively. The man is afraid. His face is pale. His body is tense. His eyes are wide and wild and fixed on the creature with an intensity that feels like heat. The creature tries to speak. It does not know what speaking is. It does not know that it has a mouth, or that mouths can produce sounds, or that sounds can carry meaning. But something stirs in its throat, some instinct left over from whatever source provided its organs, and a sound emerges. A moan, a wordless expression of something. Confusion. Wonder. A desperate reaching out toward the only other being in the world. The man stumbles backward. The creature watches him go. It does not understand. Why is he leaving? What has the creature done wrong? It tries to follow, to reach out, to make contact with this person who must know more than it does, who must be able to explain what is happening, where this is, what anything means. But the creature's limbs do not work properly. They are new, untested, disconnected from any muscle memory or learned coordination. The creature lurches, stumbles, crashes into things. By the time it reaches the door, the man is gone. The creature stands in the doorway, looking out into a world it does not understand. Everything is strange. Everything is overwhelming. Sounds pour into its ears, the rain outside, the creak of the building, the distant sounds of a city awakening, and the creature cannot distinguish one from another, cannot assign meaning to any of it. But one thing is clear, even now, even in these first chaotic moments of existence. The creature is alone. Days pass. The creature learns to move, to coordinate its enormous limbs, to walk without crashing into walls and furniture. It learns the layout of the building where it was created, exploring each room with the wonder of a child and the caution of a hunted animal. It does not know what it is. It does not know what anything is. Every object, every sound, every sensation is new and mysterious. The first time it encounters fire, a candle left burning in a lower room, it reaches out to touch the flame and recoils in agony from the burn. The first time it tastes food, scraps left in the kitchen, it is overwhelmed by the strangeness of flavor, the pleasure and necessity of eating. Each discovery is a revelation. Each revelation is a piece of the vast puzzle that is existence. But one discovery weighs heavier than all the others. The creature discovers its reflection. It happens by accident. The creature is passing a mirror, and something catches its eye. Movement, perhaps. or the flash of light on glass. It stops. It looks. And it sees itself. The face that stares back is enormous, hideous, yellow-skinned and hollow-eyed. The lips are black and stretched tight over teeth that seem too white, too large. The hair, dark and lustrous when seen individually, hangs in greasy tangles around the massive skull. The eyes are the worst. Pale, watery, dead-looking despite the life that flickers behind them. This is what I am. The creature realizes. This is what I look like. It remembers the man's expression now, the horror and disgust on his face. It understands. The creature is a monster. Something breaks inside it then. Some fragile hope. Some barely formed expectation that the world might welcome it, accept it, treat it as the man's expression had suggested it should be treated, as something worthy of attention, of care, of love. That hope dies in front of the mirror. The creature turns away from its reflection and never looks at it again. The creature leaves the building. It does not know where it is going. It does not know where it could go. But the rooms that witnessed its creation have become suffocating, haunted by the absence of its creator, heavy with the weight of its own hideous reflection. Outside, the world is vast and cold and utterly indifferent to the creature's suffering. It is winter. Snow covers the ground. The air is sharp with cold, biting at the creature's thin skin, numbing its fingers and toes. The creature has no clothes, no shelter, no knowledge of how to survive in this hostile environment. But it learns. It learns to avoid humans. This lesson comes quickly and painfully. The first time the creature approaches a village, drawn by the lights and sounds of habitation, the people scream and flee. They throw stones. They bring weapons. One man fires a musket, and the creature feels the searing pain of the ball tearing through its shoulder. It runs. It escapes. But the lesson is carved into its memory like letters carved in stone. Humans will not accept it. Humans will fear it. Humans will try to destroy it. The creature retreats into the wilderness. It finds shelter in caves and hollow trees. It learns to make fire, first by accident, lightning strike igniting a tree branch, just as Victor witnessed so many years before. Then by design, sticks together, maintaining the precious flames against the cold. It learns to find food, berries, roots, the occasional small animal that it can catch with its surprising speed and strength. Winter is harsh, but the creature is hardy. Its enormous body, for all its hideous appearance, is tough and resilient. It survives. But survival is not living. The creature is lonely, dear listener. Desperately, achingly lonely. It watches humans from a distance, hungry for connection that it knows it can never have. It observes their lives with a mixture of wonder and longing. They have homes. They have families. They have each other. The creature has nothing but its own terrible solitude. Spring comes. The snow melts. The world softens. Flowers push up through the damp earth, and birds return from wherever they have been hiding. The forest that the creature has made its home transforms from a gray and frozen wasteland into a green and fragrant paradise. The creature watches this transformation with something approaching wonder. There is beauty in the world, it realizes. Despite the ugliness it has encountered, the ugliness it sees in its own reflection, the world contains things of extraordinary beauty. The play of sunlight through leaves, the song of birds at dawn, the smell of earth after rain. These things do not hate the creature. These things do not fear it. In nature, the creature finds something it cannot find among humans: acceptance. It begins to feel, in some small way, almost happy. And then the creature discovers the cottage. Chapter 5. The D.E. Lacey Family. The cottage sits at the edge of the forest, a small and simple building of wood and stone. The creature discovers it by accident, drawn by the sound of voices, by the flicker of firelight through small windows. It approaches cautiously, remembering the violence of the village, expecting rejection and attack. But something stops it from fleeing. Music. Someone inside the cottage is playing a musical instrument, a guitar, its notes floating through the evening air like the sweetest and most painful thing the creature has ever heard. The creature crouches in the shadows, listening, transfixed. The music ends. Voices speak, soft and gentle, words the creature cannot understand but tones it can feel in its very soul. Love, kindness, the warmth of family. The creature begins to weep. It does not understand why. It does not even know what crying is. But tears stream down its hideous face, and sobs shake its massive body, and for the first time since its creation, the creature feels something other than confusion and fear. It feels longing. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. The creature does not reveal itself to the cottage's inhabitant. It knows what would happen if it did. Instead, it watches from hiding, observing their daily lives, learning from them as a child learns from its parents. There are 3 people in the cottage. The first is an old man, blind and frail, whose hair is white and whose face is kind. His name, the creature will eventually learn, is Delassie. He was once a wealthy man in France, but he and his children were forced to flee when they ran afoul of the government. He cannot see, but he plays the guitar beautifully, and when he speaks, his words are gentle and wise. The second is a young man, tall and handsome, but worn with care. His name is Felix. He works the small patch of land around the cottage, tending vegetables and cutting firewood. His face is often sad, but when he looks at his father or at the young woman who shares their home, his expression softens with love. The third is a young woman named Agatha. She is Felix's sister, fair and delicate, with a voice like music. She cares for the household, cooking and cleaning and tending to her father. She reads to him in the evenings, her voice carrying through the thin walls of the cottage, filling the creature's hiding place with words it desperately wants to understand. The creature watches. The creature listens. The creature learns. Language. This is the key to everything. The creature realizes early on that the sounds coming from the cottage are not random noise. They are communication. They carry meaning. The humans use them to share thoughts, to express emotions, to connect with one another in ways that the creature can barely imagine. It begins to pay attention. It begins to associate sounds with objects, actions, concepts. When Agatha says fire, she is looking at the flames in the hearth. When Felix says wood, he is carrying logs. When Delassie says love, his face is turned toward his children with an expression of profound tenderness. The creature's mind, whatever else can be said about it, is remarkable. It absorbs language like a sponge absorbs water. Within weeks, it can understand basic conversation. Within months, it can follow complex discussions. And as its understanding of language grows, its understanding of the world grows with it. It learns about human society, about laws and customs, nations and governments, history and philosophy. It learns about love and hatred, generosity and cruelty, the full range of human experience. It learns that the world is more complicated than it could ever have imagined. And it learns about itself. The creature finds books in a leather satchel abandoned in the forest. They were lost by some traveler, perhaps, or discarded by someone who no longer wanted them. There are 3 books: Paradise Lost by Milton, a volume of Plutarch's Lives, and The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe. The creature reads them with the same desperate hunger it applies to everything else. From Plutarch, it learns about heroes and villains, about great deeds and terrible crimes, about the capacity of humans to be both noble and monstrous. From Werther, it learns about love and loneliness, about the anguish of the human heart, about the pain of wanting something you can never have. and from Paradise Lost, it learns about creation. Milton's poem tells the story of Satan's rebellion against God, of Adam and Eve's fall from grace, of the origin of sin and suffering in the world. The creature reads it not as a story, but as a mirror. It sees in Satan a being cast out, rejected by its creator, condemned to eternal isolation. It sees in Adam a being brought into existence without consent, thrust into a world it did not choose, expected to navigate life without guidance or support. Was I then a monster? The creature wonders, a blot upon the earth from which all men fled and whom all men disowned? The question echoes in its mind, unanswerable and agonizing. Spring turns to summer. Summer turns to fall. The creature's understanding of language is now almost perfect. It can follow every word spoken in the cottage, every subtle nuance of meaning. It knows the Delassi family as well as they know themselves, perhaps better. It knows their hopes and fears, their dreams and regrets, the deep well of love that binds them together. And it knows something else. They are good people. Truly good. They have suffered injustice. The creature has pieced together the story of their exile, their fall from wealth and status, the betrayal that drove them from their homeland. But they have not become bitter. They have not turned cruel. They treat each other with tenderness. They help their neighbors. They give what little they have to those who have even less. The creature begins to hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, these people could accept it. Perhaps if they understood its story, if they could see past its hideous exterior to the soul within, they could find it in their hearts to offer what the creature craves more than anything: companionship, understanding, love. A plan begins to form in the creature's mind. It will approach the old man first. Delassi is blind. He cannot see the creature's appearance. He will hear only its voice, its words, its desperate plea for acceptance. And Delassi is kind, the kindest person the creature has ever observed. Surely, surely, he will listen. The creature rehearses what it will say. It practices speaking, hidden in the forest, working to smooth its rough voice, to articulate clearly, to express itself with the eloquence it has learned from books and conversation. It waits for the right moment. The moment comes on a day in late autumn. Felix and Agatha have gone to the village, leaving Delassi alone in the cottage. The creature watches them depart, watches the old man settle into his chair by the fire, watches the empty path for any sign of their return. Its heart, if the creature can be said to have a heart, pounds in its chest. This is it. This is the moment that will determine everything. Success or failure. Acceptance or rejection. Life or a loneliness worse than death. The creature approaches the cottage. It knocks at the door. "Come in," says Delassi's gentle voice. The creature enters. The cottage is warm, firelit, smelling of wood smoke and bread. Delassi sits in his chair, his sightless eyes turned toward the door, his expression open and welcoming. "Who is there?" he asks. "Have you come seeking shelter from the cold? You are welcome here, traveler. Come, sit by the fire." The creature's throat tightens. It has prepared so many words, practiced so many speeches, and now, standing in the presence of another being for the first time since its creation, it can barely speak. I am a traveler," the creature finally manages. "I am in need of rest and kindness. But I must confess, I am different from other travelers. I am not what you might expect." Delassi tilts his head, curious. "We are all different, friend. God made each of us unique. Sit. Rest. Tell me of your journey." The creature sits, grateful for the invitation, terrified of the revelation to come. They talk. Delassi is as kind as the creature hoped, as wise, as gentle. He asks questions about the creature's travels, and the creature answers cautiously, truthfully. It speaks of wandering in the wilderness, of loneliness, of a desperate search for belonging. It speaks of observing a family without naming the délaissés and learning from them, loving them. It speaks of observing a family without naming the délaissés and learning from them, loving them from afar, wanting nothing more than to be accepted by beings who seemed to embody everything good in humanity. Delassie listens with growing sympathy. "You have suffered," the old man says softly. "I can hear it in your voice. Loneliness is a terrible burden, especially for one who has done nothing to deserve it. But you are wrong to think yourself beyond acceptance. The world can be cruel, yes, but there is also kindness in it. There are people who will see past your differences, whatever they may be, and embrace you for who you are." The creature feels something warm expanding in its chest. Hope. Fragile, desperate, impossible hope. "The family I spoke of," the creature says, its voice trembling. "I wish to meet them. I wish to throw myself upon their mercy and beg them to accept me. But I fear that when they see me, they will recoil. They will reject me before I can explain myself. They will see only my exterior and judge me by that alone." Delassie reaches out, his hand finding the creature's arm. The creature flinches at the touch, the first human contact it has experienced since Victor fled from its creation. But Delassie does not pull away. "Then speak first," the old man says. "Let your words be heard before your appearance is seen. Any person of feeling would be honored by your affection. You seem sincere, you seem good. I cannot see your face, my friend, but I can hear your heart. And your heart is beautiful." The creature is weeping now, tears streaming down its hideous face, its massive shoulders shaking with sobs. "You are kind," it whispers, "kinder than anyone I have ever known. If only others could see me as you do." At that moment, the door flies open. Felix and Agatha have returned early from the village. They stand in the doorway, frozen with shock, staring at the enormous figure crouched beside their father. For one terrible instant, no one moves. The creature turns its face toward them. Its eyes meet Felix's. It sees the horror dawning in the young man's expression, the revulsion twisting his handsome features, the same look it has seen on every human face that has ever beheld it. "Father," Agatha screams. "Get away from him. Monster. Demon." Felix does not hesitate. He seizes a walking stick from beside the door and rushes at the creature, swinging with all his strength. "Wait," the creature cries. "Please, I mean no harm. Let me explain." But Felix is not listening. He beats the creature with the stick, driving it away from his father, out of the cottage, into the cold autumn air. Agatha is screaming. Delassie is calling out in confusion, not understanding what is happening, his sightless eyes wide with alarm. The creature does not fight back. It could. It is far stronger than Felix, far more powerful than any human. It could crush the young man with a single blow, could sweep aside any resistance, could take what it wants by force. But that is not what it wants. The creature flees into the forest, pursued by Felix's curses and Agatha's screams, leaving behind the only place it has ever felt at home. That night, the creature returns. Not to beg for acceptance, not to try again. Something has changed inside it. Something fundamental and irreversible. The hope that kept it going. The fragile belief that kindness might exist somewhere in the world. That hope is dead now, as dead as the tissue from which the creature was made. In its place is something else. Rage. The creature finds the cottage dark and silent. The Delassies have fled, terrified by the monster that invaded their home. They are gone, probably forever, leaving behind the place where the creature learned what it means to be human. The creature stands before the empty building, trembling with an emotion it does not fully understand. "Why?" it whispers. "Why did they reject me? I offered them nothing but love. I wanted nothing but their acceptance. I was gentle. I was kind. I would have done anything for them. But it was not enough. Nothing would ever be enough. The creature understands that now. It does not matter how gentle it is, how eloquent, how sincere. It does not matter how much love it has to give. Humans will never accept it. They will always see the monster, never the soul within. The creature picks up a burning brand from a fire it built in the forest. It approaches the cottage. The flames take hold quickly, climbing the wooden walls, consuming the thatched roof, turning the place of so much happiness into an inferno of destruction. The creature watches the fire rise against the night sky, its face lit by the dancing light, its eyes reflecting the flames. I am done with love, the creature says to itself. I am done with hope. If I cannot inspire kindness, I will cause fear. If I cannot find a companion, I will make sure my creator suffers as I have suffered. It turns its back on the burning cottage and begins to walk. Its destination, Geneva. Its purpose, vengeance. Chapter 6. The Journal. The creature's journey to Geneva takes many weeks. It travels by night, hiding during the day, avoiding all contact with humans. The route is long and difficult, leading through forests and over mountains, across rivers and through villages that the creature skirts carefully, keeping to the shadows, moving like a ghost through a world that does not want it. During this journey, the creature finds something in the pocket of the coat it took from Victor's laboratory so long ago. A journal. Victor's journal. The creature had discovered the coat months earlier, had worn it for warmth without examining its contents. But now, during a long night of waiting in a cave while rain poured outside, the creature reaches into the pockets and finds a small leather-bound book filled with cramped handwriting. It takes the creature hours to decipher the script. Victor's hand is difficult, rushed, the writing of a man consumed by obsession. But the creature persists, driven by an overwhelming need to understand. What it finds changes everything. The journal chronicles Victor's creation of the creature. Every step, every discovery, every moment of the long and terrible process. It describes the materials Victor used, the graveyards and charnel houses from which he gathered them, the methods by which he assembled his creation. The creature reads about itself being built like a machine, pieced together from the dead, animated by forces its creator did not fully understand. It reads Victor's descriptions of the work, the horror and fascination mingled together, the ambition that drove him forward, the growing unease that he ignored. And it reads Victor's reaction to the finished creature. His first words upon seeing the creature alive were these: I had worked hard for nearly 2 years for the sole purpose of infusing life into an inanimate body. For this I had deprived myself of rest and health. I had desired it with an ardor that far exceeded moderation, but now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Horror, disgust. These were Victor's feelings upon seeing his creation draw its first breath. The creature reads on, its hands trembling, its eyes burning. Unable to endure the aspect of the being I had created, I rushed out of the room. I threw myself on the bed in my clothes, endeavoring to seek a few moments of forgetfulness. Victor had abandoned his creation, had looked upon it once and fled, had left it alone, confused, newborn, with no guidance and no explanation and no love. The journal confirms what the creature has long suspected. Victor Frankenstein is responsible for everything. Not just the creature's existence that could perhaps be forgiven, even thanked, but for its suffering, for its hideous appearance, for its abandonment, for the loneliness that has poisoned its existence from the very first moment. Victor made the creature. Victor made it ugly. Victor rejected it. Victor set it loose in a world that would never accept it. And now, Victor will pay. The creature closes the journal and tucks it carefully away. Its resolve is harder now, colder, more absolute. It is no longer simply angry. It is purposeful. It has a target for its rage, a focus for its pain. It resumes its journey toward Geneva. Spring arrives as the creature approaches its destination. The mountains that surround Geneva are still capped with snow, but the lower valleys are beginning to green. Wildflowers push through the damp earth. Birds sing in the trees. The air smells of growth and renewal. The creature notices none of this. It has found a place to hide in the forest near the Frankenstein estate, a hollow in the rocks that provides shelter and concealment. From here it watches. It observes the comings and goings of the household. It learns the rhythms of the family's life. The family has diminished since Victor left for Ingolstadt. The mother, Caroline, is dead. The creature learned this from Victor's journal. But the father still lives, older now and worn with grief. The adopted sister, Elizabeth, is there, beautiful and sad. The youngest brother, William, is a child of perhaps 7 or 8, golden-haired and laughing, innocent of everything that haunts this family. The creature watches William with particular attention. It does not plan what happens next. It does not decide to kill the child. The events unfold with a terrible inevitability, as if they have been scripted by some malevolent fate. One evening, William wanders into the forest alone. He is playing some game known only to himself, running through the trees, chasing butterflies or imaginary companions. He goes further than he should, deeper into the woods, away from the safety of the estate. The creature sees him. It watches the child play, feeling something stir in its chest. Not hatred, not yet. Something more complicated. Envy, perhaps. Longing, a memory of the hope it once felt. The dream of being accepted. The fantasy of finding someone who could look past its hideous exterior and see the soul within. A child might be different, the creature thinks. A child has not yet learned to hate. A child might be convinced that I am not a monster. It steps out of hiding. William sees the creature and freezes. For a moment, the child simply stares, his blue eyes wide, his mouth slightly open. He is not screaming, he is not running, he is just looking, with the innocent curiosity of the very young. The creature approaches slowly, carefully, its hands raised in what it hopes is a gesture of peace. "Do not be afraid," the creature says. "I will not hurt you. I only want." But the child's expression has changed. The curiosity has given way to fear. The innocence has been replaced by the same horror the creature has seen on every human face. "Monster." William screams. "Ugly monster. Get away from me." He turns to run. The creature catches him. It does not mean to hurt the child. It only wants to stop him, to calm him, to explain. But its hands are too large, too strong, and the child is so small, so fragile. "Let me go." William screams, struggling in the creature's grip. "Let me go." "My father is Alphonse Frankenstein. He will punish you. He will." The creature freezes. Frankenstein. This child is a Frankenstein. This child is Victor's brother. This child is a member of the family that gave Victor everything. Love, wealth, education, opportunity, while Victor's creation was given nothing but abandonment and suffering. Something dark rises in the creature's heart. "Frankenstein," the creature repeats. "So you belong to my enemy. To him who I have sworn eternal revenge. You shall be my first victim." What happens next takes only seconds. The creature's hands close around the child's throat. William's screams cut off. His small body goes limp. When the creature lets go, the child falls to the ground, dead. The creature stands over the body, trembling. What has it done? The child was innocent. The child had done nothing to deserve this. The child was guilty only of being born into the wrong family, of bearing a name that the creature has come to hate. But even as remorse flickers through its mind, something else rises to meet it: satisfaction. Victor will suffer now. Victor will know what it feels like to lose something precious. Victor will understand, at last, the pain he has inflicted upon his creation. The creature looks down at William's body and notices something glinting in the moonlight. A locket hangs around the child's neck. The creature opens it and finds a miniature portrait of a beautiful woman. Caroline Frankenstein, Victor's dead mother, painted in life, now carried by her youngest son. The creature takes the locket and slips away into the darkness. It has one more thing to do before it disappears. Near the estate, in a barn where the servants sometimes rest, the creature finds a young woman sleeping. Her name is Justine Moritz. The creature knows this from its weeks of observation. She is a servant in the Frankenstein household, beloved by the family, practically a member of it. She is innocent, kind, devoted. She is also the perfect scapegoat. The creature places the locket in the pocket of Justine's dress, then vanishes into the forest. Let Victor suffer, the creature thinks as it retreats into the wilderness. Let him watch his family be destroyed, one by one. Let him know what it means to be alone. This is only the beginning. Chapter 7. Return. Victor Frankenstein returns to Geneva a changed man. The months of fever following his creation of the creature have left him weakened, but he has recovered under Henry Clerval's devoted care. He has resumed his studies, though without the obsessive intensity of before. He has even begun to convince himself that the creature was a nightmare, a delusion born of exhaustion and mental strain. But the letter from his father shatters this fragile peace. William is dead. Murdered. Strangled by an unknown assailant in the forest near the family estate. Victor reads the letter with shaking hands. He knows, even before he returns to Geneva, even before he hears the details of the crime, he knows. The creature did this, his creation, his monster. The thing he brought into the world and then abandoned, it has killed his brother. The innocent child who never harmed anyone, who knew nothing of Victor's sins, who was guilty only of sharing Victor's blood. Victor travels home in a state of anguish that cannot be described. He arrives at night, during a storm. Lightning flickers across the mountains. Thunder rolls through the valleys. The wind howls and the rain pours down in sheets, as if the heavens themselves are weeping for what has happened. Victor walks through the forest where William was killed. And there, in a flash of lightning, he sees it. The creature. It stands among the trees, enormous and unmistakable, its yellow skin gleaming in the momentary brilliance of the electrical discharge. Its eyes meet Victor's, and in that instant, Victor sees everything he needs to know. The creature killed William. And it did so to punish Victor. Victor lunges toward the monster, but another flash reveals that it has vanished, moving with a speed no human could match. Victor is left alone in the storm, screaming into the darkness, cursing the thing he created, cursing himself for creating it. By the time Victor reaches home, events have already spiraled beyond his control. Justine Moritz has been arrested for William's murder. The evidence against her seems damning. The locket was found in her pocket. She cannot explain how it got there. She was seen near the forest on the night of the murder. The townspeople, grieving and angry, have already convicted her in their hearts. Victor knows she is innocent. He knows the creature is responsible. But he cannot speak. What would he say? That he created a monster from dead flesh? That he brought it to life with electricity and madness? That he abandoned it, and now it has returned to take revenge? No one would believe him. They would think him insane. And even if they believed him, what then? Victor would have to confess his crimes, reveal the depths of his transgression against nature and God. He would be ruined. His family would be ruined. Everything would be destroyed. So, Victor says nothing. He attends Justine's trial. He watches the evidence presented against her. He sees the terror in her eyes as she realizes that no one believes her protests of innocence. Elizabeth speaks in Justine's defense, testifying to her good character, her gentleness, her love for the family. It does no good. The jury is unmoved. The verdict is guilty. Justine is sentenced to death. Victor visits her in her cell the night before the execution. "I know you are innocent," he tells her, his voice breaking. "I know who really killed William. But I cannot prove it. I cannot explain." Justine looks at him with eyes that have already accepted death. "You believe me," she says softly. "That is enough. Whatever secret you carry, Mr. Frankenstein, I hope it does not destroy you as it has destroyed me." She forgives him. She forgives everyone. And in the morning, she is hanged. Victor watches from a distance, sick with guilt, sick with horror, sick with the knowledge that his silence has killed an innocent woman. 2 murders now weigh upon his conscience. 2 lives destroyed because he was too weak, too afraid, too selfish to speak the truth. And the creature is still out there, watching, waiting, planning its next act of vengeance. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. Weeks pass in a haze of grief and guilt. Victor cannot eat. He cannot sleep. He wanders through the family estate like a ghost, avoiding Elizabeth's worried eyes, ignoring his father's attempts at comfort, drowning in a sea of self-recrimination that threatens to pull him under entirely. He begins to take long walks in the mountains, hoping that the physical exertion will quiet his tortured mind. He climbs higher and higher, into regions of snow and ice, into landscapes so vast and empty that human concerns seem to shrink into insignificance. It is on one of these walks that the creature finds him. Victor is crossing a glacier, picking his way across a field of ice that gleams blue and white under the summer sun. The mountains rise around him like the walls of a cathedral. The air is thin and cold. He is utterly alone. Or so he thinks. A figure appears on the ice ahead of him. Victor stops. His heart begins to pound. He knows, even before he can make out the details, what is approaching. The creature walks toward him with a stride that eats up the distance between them. It is larger than Victor remembered, more powerful, more terrifying. Its yellow skin is weathered now, tanned by exposure to the elements, but no less hideous. Its eyes burn with an intelligence that Victor still cannot quite believe he created. They stand facing each other on the glacier, creator and creation, in a confrontation that has been building since the night of the creature's birth. Devil. Victor shouts, "Vile insect, abhorred monster. Do you dare approach me? Do you not fear that I will take vengeance upon you?" The creature's expression does not change. "I expected this reception," it says, and its voice is deep and rough, but articulate, far more articulate than Victor would have believed possible. "All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, you detest and spurn me, your creature, to whom you are bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us." Victor's hands clench into fists. "You murdered my brother. You caused the death of an innocent woman. I should have destroyed you the moment I created you." "Why did you not?" the creature asks. "Why did you give me feelings and sensations, only to abandon me? Why did you make me so hideous that you yourself could not bear to look upon me?" Victor has no answer to this. "I ought to be your Adam," the creature continues, "but I am rather the fallen angel, whom you drove from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good, misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. Happy? Victor snarls. How could you ever be happy? How could I ever make you happy? The creature steps closer. Hear me, Frankenstein. Hear my tale. You accuse me of murder, and yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, destroy your own creature. Oh, praise the eternal justice of man. Yet I ask you not to spare me. Listen to me. And then, if you can, and if you will, destroy the work of your hands. Victor hesitates. Part of him wants to attack the creature, to throw himself upon it, to destroy it with his bare hands or die in the attempt. But another part, a part that remembers his guilt, his responsibility, his role in everything that has happened, hesitates. Speak, Victor says finally. Tell me your tale. But know this, nothing you say can excuse what you have done. The creature sits on a boulder of ice and begins to tell its story. It speaks for hours. It tells Victor everything. The confusion of its first moments of consciousness, the abandonment, the flight from the laboratory, the discovery of its own hideous reflection, the months of wandering in the wilderness, learning to survive, learning to understand the world. It tells of the Delassi family, of the love it felt for them, the hope that sustained it, the careful plan to reveal itself and beg for acceptance. It tells of Felix's attack, Agatha's screams, the destruction of the cottage. It tells of finding Victor's journal, of reading the account of its own creation, written by the man who should have been its father, its protector, its guide, of the horror and rage it felt when it understood the full extent of Victor's crime. And finally, with something almost like shame, it tells of William, of the encounter in the forest, the child's terror, the moment of murderous rage that ended an innocent life. I am alone, the creature concludes, utterly alone. I have no companion, no friend, no family. The whole human race has rejected me. Even my creator, the one being who should have cared for me, has abandoned me. Victor listens in silence, his expression unreadable. I have one demand, the creature says. Grant it, and you will never see me again. Refuse, and I will continue to plague you until one of us is destroyed. What is your demand? The creature rises to its feet. Make me a companion. A female, like myself, as hideous as myself, someone who will not shrink from me in disgust, someone who will share my exile, my wanderings, my solitude. I am content to live apart from humanity, to dwell in the wastes of the world where no human will ever see me. But I cannot bear to live alone. Victor recoils. Another creature? Another monster? No, never. I will not. Do you think I enjoy what I have become? The creature interrupts. Do you think I would not gladly have lived in peace, if peace had been offered to me? You have rejected me. The Delasses rejected me. Every human I have encountered has rejected me. But if I had a companion, someone like myself, I would have no need of humanity. I would leave this land and never return. You would never hear of me again. I swear it. Victor shakes his head. I cannot trust you. You killed my brother. You framed an innocent woman. You are a murderer. Made so by your neglect, the creature says. Made so by the cruelty of a world that judged me by my appearance alone. But I was not always a murderer. I was not always a monster. For 2 years I lived in the forest near the Delassis, harming no one, helping when I could, dreaming only of acceptance. You destroyed that dream, you and everyone like you. But I can still be saved. Give me a companion, and you save us both. Victor is silent for a long time. The wind howls around them, cold and bitter. The sun is beginning to set, painting the mountains in shades of orange and gold. The glacier creaks beneath their feet, ancient ice shifting and groaning. Victor thinks of William, of Justine, of the creature's terrible strength and terrible intelligence. He thinks of what it might do if he refuses, the havoc it could wreak, the lives it could destroy, and he thinks of what it might mean to create another such being. To bring into the world a second creature, a female, equally powerful and potentially equally dangerous. The risks are enormous. The moral implications are staggering. But so is the alternative. If I agree to this, Victor says slowly, what guarantee do I have that you will keep your word? My word is all I have, the creature replies. I have nothing else to offer. But consider, if I wished only to destroy, I could do so easily. I could hunt down everyone you love and kill them, one by one. I could make your life a living hell. But I do not want that. I want peace. I want companionship. I want to disappear into the wilderness and never trouble humanity again. It pauses. I will go to the wilds of South America, far from any human habitation. I will live on roots and berries. I will never harm another living being. All I ask is someone to share this exile with me. Someone who will not flinch at my touch or scream at my face. Someone who will love me as I have so desperately wanted to be loved. Victor bows his head. He knows what he must do. He knows that he is responsible for the creature's existence, responsible for its suffering, responsible for everything that has happened. He knows that if he refuses, more innocent people will die. I will do it, Victor says. I will create a companion for you. But you must promise, swear to me, that once I have done this, you will leave. You will take your companion and go. You will never return. You will never harm another human being. I swear it, the creature says. On whatever spark of divinity exists within my wretched soul, I swear it. Then it is agreed. The creature turns and begins to walk away across the glacier. Before it disappears over the horizon of ice, it pauses and looks back. Be diligent, Frankenstein, it says. I will be watching. And then, it is gone. Chapter 9, The Second Creation. The months that follow are among the darkest of Victor's life. He knows what he has promised to do. He knows he must do it. But the prospect fills him with horror that grows worse with every passing day. To create another creature, to assemble another body from the dead, to breathe life into lifeless flesh once more. He had hoped never to return to such work. He had hoped that the nightmare was behind him. But the nightmare has only just begun. Victor throws himself into preparations. He reads the latest scientific literature, trying to refresh his knowledge, trying to remember the procedures and techniques that produced the first creature. He gathers materials secretly, visiting graveyards and dissecting rooms and all the places that still haunt his dreams. But something is different this time. Victor is not driven by ambition. He is not seeking glory or knowledge or the conquest of death. He is working out of fear, out of guilt, out of a desperate hope that by fulfilling his promise, he can put an end to the horror he has unleashed. He tells his family that he must travel. Research, he says. Studies that require access to libraries and laboratories unavailable in Geneva. His father is concerned, but supportive. Elizabeth is worried, but accepting. Henry Clerval insists on accompanying him, at least for part of the journey. Victor agrees, grateful for the company, even though he knows he cannot reveal the true nature of his mission. They travel first to England, spending months in London and Oxford. Victor visits universities and meets with scholars, going through the motions of legitimate research while secretly gathering the materials he needs. Henry is a constant source of comfort during this time. His cheerful disposition, his enthusiasm for new places and new ideas, his unwavering friendship, these things are a lifeline for Victor, keeping him tethered to sanity in the midst of his terrible task. But Victor knows that Henry cannot accompany him to the final stage of his work. What he must do requires absolute solitude. No one can know, no one can see. The creation of the female must be accomplished in secret, far from any human eyes. Victor leaves Henry in Scotland and travels alone to the Orkney Islands. The Orkneys are among the most remote and desolate places in Britain. Windswept and treeless, they rise from the gray northern sea like the bones of some ancient beast. The few inhabitants are farmers and fishermen, hardy folk who keep to themselves and ask no questions of strangers. Victor rents a small hut on the most isolated island he can find. It has 3 rooms, barely furnished, with a roof that leaks and walls that do little to keep out the cold. The nearest neighbor is miles away. It is perfect. He sets up his laboratory. He arranges his materials. He begins to work. The task is easier this time in some ways. Victor knows what he is doing. He has done it before. The principles are clear in his mind, the procedures familiar to his hands. But in other ways, it is infinitely harder. Every night, Victor dreams of what he is creating. He sees the female creature rising from his table, as hideous as her mate, as powerful, as intelligent. He sees the 2 of them together, wandering through some primeval wilderness, talking, touching, loving. And he sees something else. Children. What if the creatures breed? What if they produce offspring? What if Victor is creating not one companion, but the progenitors of an entire race of monsters? The thought tortures him. It grows stronger with every passing day, feeding on his isolation, his guilt, his endless capacity for self-doubt. He imagines armies of creatures spreading across the earth, overwhelming humanity, destroying everything in their path. He imagines himself as the architect of humanity's extinction, the man who ended the world because he was too afraid to say no. And there is another fear, even darker. What if the female does not want the male? Victor created the first creature with his own notions of strength and capability. But he knows nothing of the female's heart, the female's desires, the female's will. What if she looks upon her mate and feels the same horror that humans feel? What if she refuses him? Or worse, what if she is even more violent, more vengeful, more dangerous than the original creature? Victor has no way of knowing what kind of being he is creating. He has no way of controlling what she will become. He is playing God with forces he does not understand, gambling with stakes higher than any human has the right to wager. As the female creature nears completion, Victor's doubts reach a fever pitch. He stands in his laboratory, looking down at the unfinished body on his table. It is almost done. A few more days of work, a few more adjustments, and it will be ready for animation. The room is dark, lit only by candles that flicker in the draft from the leaking walls. Outside, a storm is gathering, the same kind of storm that witnessed the birth of the first creature so many years ago. Victor's hands are trembling. He thinks of his promise to the creature. He thinks of the consequences of breaking it, the vengeance, the murder, the destruction that will surely follow. But he also thinks of the consequences of keeping it. A race of monsters. The end of humanity. An abomination against nature and God that can never be undone. Victor takes a step back from the table. His eyes sweep across the laboratory, taking in all the apparatus, all the materials, all the evidence of his terrible work. And then he sees something in the window. A face. The creature is there, watching. It has followed him, tracked him, observed him. It has been watching his progress, waiting for him to complete his work. Their eyes meet through the grimy glass. Victor sees eagerness in those pale, watery eyes. Hunger. Hope. The desperate longing of a being who has spent years dreaming of the companion who will finally end its solitude. And in that moment, Victor makes his decision. He cannot do it. He cannot create another creature. He cannot risk the destruction of humanity for for the sake of a promise made under duress. He cannot play God with forces he does not understand. Whatever the consequences, he must stop. Victor seizes the half-finished female and begins to tear it apart. The creature's expression changes from hope to confusion to horror to rage. It pounds on the window, its fists cracking the glass. Its scream of anguish is audible even through the howling wind. No, the creature screams. You promised. You swore. But Victor does not stop. He dismembers the female, destroying hours and weeks of work, reducing it to the unrecognizable pieces from which it was assembled. The creature breaks through the window and rushes at him, but Victor is already done. The female is no more. Victor turns to face the creature, breathing hard, covered in the fluids and tissues of his destroyed creation. "It is finished," Victor says. "I will not create another. Do what you will to me. I will not change my mind." The creature stares at the wreckage on the table. For a long moment, it does not move. It simply stares, its massive body trembling, its face contorted with an emotion that might be grief or rage or both. When it finally speaks, its voice is quiet, terrifyingly quiet. "You have destroyed my hope," the creature says. "You have condemned me to eternal solitude. You have broken your word." "I have done what I must," Victor replies. "What you ask is too dangerous. I cannot risk." "Risk?" The creature interrupts. "You speak of risk? What risk did I pose when I was born? I was innocent then. I was good. It was your abandonment that made me what I am. It was humanity's cruelty. And now, when I ask for only one thing, one companion, one soul to share my exile, you deny me even that." Victor says nothing. The creature steps closer. "Very well, Frankenstein. If you will not give me happiness, I will give you misery. If I cannot know love, neither will you. I will be with you on your wedding night." Victor's blood runs cold. The creature turns and leaps through the broken window, disappearing into the storm. Victor is left alone with the ruins of his second creation, the howling wind, and a threat that will echo in his nightmares until the day it comes true. Chapter 10. The Murders. Victor destroys all evidence of his work on the Orkneys. He packs the dismembered remains of the female into a basket weighted with stones. He rows out to sea in a small boat, far from shore, where the water is dark and deep. He dumps the basket overboard and watches it sink into the abyss. Then he collapses in the bottom of the boat and sleeps. When he wakes, he is lost. The storm has blown him far off course. The islands are no longer visible. The sky is gray and featureless, offering no clue to direction. The boat drifts on currents that Victor cannot read. For hours, he floats without purpose. Finally, land appears. A coast, a harbor, a town. Victor brings the boat to shore, weak with hunger and exhaustion. He is immediately surrounded by hostile faces. The townspeople are angry. They accuse him of murder. A body has been found, they tell him. A young man, strangled, washed up on the beach. Witnesses saw a boat leaving the scene. Victor's boat. Victor is arrested. They take him to see the body, hoping perhaps for a confession, hoping to see guilt in his face. Victor looks down at the corpse. It is Henry Clerval. The world goes dark around Victor. He hears screaming and realizes it is coming from his own throat. He collapses, falling into a fever that is almost exactly like the one that followed the creation of the first creature. For months, he lingers between life and death. When he finally recovers, he finds that his father has come to take him home. The murder charges have been dropped, there was not enough evidence to convict, and Victor's fever was taken as proof of his innocence, the sign of a man too sensitive to have committed such a crime. But Victor knows the truth. The creature killed Henry. Killed him to punish Victor. Killed the best friend Victor ever had. the one who had nursed him through his first breakdown, the one who represented everything good and bright and hopeful in the world. Henry is dead because of Victor. The journey home is a blur of grief and guilt. Victor's father speaks to him gently, trying to offer comfort. But Victor barely hears. He is lost in a spiral of self-recrimination that seems to have no bottom. William, Justine, Henry, 3 lives destroyed because of him. 3 innocent people dead because he was too arrogant, too obsessed, too blind to see the consequences of his actions. And the creature is still out there, still watching, still waiting. I will be with you on your wedding night. The words echo in Victor's mind over and over. His wedding night. Elizabeth. Victor realizes with growing horror what the creature is planning. It will kill Elizabeth, just as it killed William, just as it killed Henry. It will wait until Victor is at his happiest, until he is on the verge of the life he has dreamed of, and then it will strike. Unless Victor stops it. He begins to make plans. He will not flee. He will not hide. He will face the creature on his wedding night and destroy it, once and for all. He has no weapons powerful enough to kill such a being. But he will find a way. He must find a way. The alternative is unthinkable. When Victor arrives home, Elizabeth is waiting for him. She is still beautiful, still gentle, still devoted. But there are shadows under her eyes now, lines of worry around her mouth. The losses of the past years have marked her, just as they have marked everyone in the Frankenstein household. Victor looks at her and feels love flood through him. She is the only brightness left in his life, the only reason to go on. If he can save her, if he can defeat the creature and keep Elizabeth safe, then perhaps, there is still hope. They set the wedding date. Chapter 11. The wedding night. The wedding takes place in Geneva, in the church where generations of Frankensteins have celebrated their unions. Elizabeth is radiant in white. Victor wears the expression of a man walking to his own execution. He cannot shake the creature's threat from his mind. Every shadow seems to hide the monster. Every unexpected sound makes him flinch. But he says the words. He makes the vows. He places the ring on Elizabeth's finger and accepts her as his wife. Perhaps he is wrong. Perhaps the creature's threat was empty. Perhaps this will truly be the beginning of a new life, a happy life, a life free from the horrors of the past. They travel to a villa on the shores of Lake Como for their honeymoon. The setting is beautiful beyond description. Mountains rise from the still waters. Gardens bloom with flowers in every color. The air is warm and fragrant, filled with the sounds of birdsong and the gentle lapping of waves. Victor tries to relax, tries to believe that everything will be all right. But as the sun sets and darkness falls over the lake, his fear returns. He insists that Elizabeth retire to their room while he patrols the villa. He arms himself with pistols and walks through the grounds, peering into every shadow, ready for the attack he knows is coming. Hours pass. Nothing happens. Victor begins to wonder if he was wrong. Perhaps the creature meant something else. Perhaps it was bluffing. Perhaps a scream. Elizabeth's scream. Victor races back to the villa, his heart pounding, his blood cold with terror. He bursts through the door of their room. Elizabeth lies across the bed, her white wedding dress spread around her like the petals of a dying flower. Her eyes are open, staring at nothing. Her throat bears the marks of enormous fingers. She is dead. Victor collapses beside her, taking her body in his arms, screaming her name, begging her to wake up. And then, he sees it. The creature is at the window, watching. Its face is twisted into something that might be a smile. It points at Victor, a gesture of triumph and mockery, and then it vanishes into the night. Victor fires his pistols into the darkness, but the bullets find nothing. The creature is gone, and Elizabeth is dead. The news of Elizabeth's death destroys what remains of Victor's father. Alphonse Frankenstein has already buried his wife and his youngest son. He has watched his family crumble, piece by piece. This final blow is too much. Within days of Elizabeth's murder, Alphonse Frankenstein dies of a broken heart. Victor is alone now. Everyone he loved is dead. Everything he cared about is gone. The creature has won. But Victor does not give up. Instead, he makes a new vow. He will hunt the creature to the ends of the earth. He will pursue it across continents and oceans, through deserts and mountains, into the very heart of darkness if necessary. He will not rest, will not stop, will not falter until the monster is destroyed. This is no longer about revenge. It is no longer about justice. It is about ending the horror. Finishing what he started, destroying the abomination he brought into the world. Victor sets out on his final journey. Chapter 12, The Pursuit. The hunt leads Victor across Europe. He follows the creature's trail through cities and villages, through forests and farmland. Sometimes he catches glimpses of his quarry in the distance. Sometimes he finds signs of its passage, enormous footprints, terrified witnesses, the occasional body left behind as a message. The creature is always ahead of him, always just out of reach, always moving. It is playing with Victor, he realizes, toying with him, leading him on a chase that has no end. But Victor will not stop. He has nothing left to lose. His family is dead. His friends are dead. His career, his reputation, his sanity, all gone. There is only the pursuit, the endless pursuit, the single-minded determination to catch the monster and destroy it. The trail leads north, through the Baltic states, through Scandinavia, into the frozen wastes of Russia, where the snow stretches to the horizon and the cold bites through the thickest firs. Victor follows. He buys a sledge and a team of dogs. He wraps himself in layers of clothing that barely keep him alive. He eats when he can, sleeps when he must, but never stops for long. Always forward, always north. The creature seems to be leading him somewhere. To the very edge of the world, perhaps. To the frozen sea where the ice stretches unbroken to the pole. Victor follows. He finds messages left for him, carved into trees or scratched into rocks. "Follow me," one reads. "I seek the everlasting ices of the north, where you will feel the misery of cold and frost, to which I am impassive." Another says, "Come on, my enemy. We have yet to wrestle for our lives, but many hard and miserable hours must you endure until that period shall arrive." The creature is taunting him, daring him, ensuring that the chase continues. Victor follows. The cold grows more intense with every passing day. The sun barely rises above the horizon. The ice is a wilderness of ridges and crevasses, treacherous and unforgiving. Victor's dogs begin to die. First one, then another. He cuts them from the harness and leaves them where they fall, continuing with what remains of his team. His supplies dwindle. His strength fades. His body is breaking down, succumbing to the cold and the exhaustion and the impossible demands of the pursuit. But Victor will not stop. He cannot stop. And then, one day, he sees the creature. It is on the ice ahead, a dark figure against the white expanse, moving with that impossible speed. Victor whips his remaining dogs forward, urging them to greater effort. The gap begins to close. But the ice is treacherous. A crack appears, running between Victor and his quarry. The ice shifts and groans. The crack widens, becoming a channel of black water that grows larger with every passing second. The creature leaps across. Victor cannot follow. He is stranded on an ice floe, drifting further and further from his enemy. The creature stops on the far side of the widening gap. It watches Victor with those pale, watery eyes, and then it turns and walks away, disappearing into the frozen wilderness. Victor is left alone on the ice, dying, defeated, his life's purpose slipping away like the warmth from his failing body. He does not know how long he drifts. Days, perhaps. Weeks. Time loses meaning in the endless white. His dogs are all dead now. His supplies are gone. He lies on the ice, too weak to move, waiting for the end. And that is when the ship appears. Chapter 13. The Stranger on the Ice. The ship is a marvel of human engineering, a vessel designed for Arctic exploration, carrying a crew of brave men seeking a passage through the ice to the northern seas. Its captain is Robert Walton, a young man driven by ambition and curiosity, determined to make discoveries that will earn him a place in history. Walton sees the figure on the ice from the deck of his ship. At first, he thinks it is a mirage. The Arctic plays tricks on the mind. But as the ship draws closer, he realizes that it is real. A man, barely alive, stranded on an ice floe that is slowly breaking apart. Walton orders his crew to rescue the stranger. They bring him aboard with great difficulty. He is nearly frozen, barely conscious, more dead than alive. The ship's doctor does what he can, but he is not optimistic. Yet the stranger recovers. Slowly, painfully, he returns from the edge of death. His eyes open, his lips move. He asks, in a voice rough with disuse, a single question. The man on the sledge, the one you saw crossing the ice, where did he go? Walton is puzzled. He did indeed see another figure on the ice, a large man traveling by sledge at tremendous speed. The crew pointed him out before they spotted the dying stranger. North, Walton replies. We saw him heading north, across the ice fields. The stranger tries to rise. Then I must follow, he says. Give me food and rest, and I will take your smaller boat. I will continue the pursuit. Walton is astonished by this display of determination. The stranger is clearly dying. His body is broken, his mind is fevered, his chances of survival almost non-existent. Yet he speaks of continuing his pursuit as if it is the only thing that matters. You cannot survive on the ice, Walton says. You are too weak. The journey would kill you. Then let it kill me, the stranger replies. I have nothing left to lose. Walton sits with the stranger, nursing him, listening to his ravings. Over the following days, as the stranger's strength slowly returns, Walton begins to draw out his story. The stranger's name is Victor Frankenstein. He is a scientist, or was, a creator. A man who reached for powers beyond human understanding and paid the price for his hubris. He has a tale to tell. Walton listens with growing horror as Victor recounts everything. The university, the obsession, the creation, the murders, the pursuit. Victor holds nothing back. He speaks of his guilt, his shame, his desperate hope that by destroying the creature, he might somehow atone for all the evil he has caused. Learn from my mistakes, Victor says. You seek glory, Captain. You seek to push beyond the boundaries of the known world. But there are boundaries that should not be crossed. There are some secrets that are better left undiscovered. Walton is shaken. Victor's tale is like a dark mirror reflecting his own ambitions back at him in distorted and frightening forms. What happened to the creature? Walton asks. Victor shakes his head. I do not know. It is out there still, somewhere on the ice. And I must find it. I must finish what I started. But Victor is too weak. His body has endured too much. Despite all his determination, he cannot rise from the bed where Walton's crew has placed him. Victor Frankenstein dies. It happens quietly, in the small hours of the night. Walton is sitting beside him, half asleep, when he realizes that the stranger's labored breathing has stopped. He checks for a pulse. There is none. Victor Frankenstein is dead. Walton sits in silence, mourning a man he has known for only a few weeks but has come to understand more deeply than most of his oldest friends. And then he hears a sound. A creaking of timbers, the brush of something moving through the ship, footsteps, impossibly heavy, approaching the cabin. Walton turns. The creature is standing in the doorway. Chapter 14. The Final Visit. It is enormous, 8 feet tall, perhaps more, its body filling the narrow passage. Its face is a horror of yellow skin and watery eyes and black lips drawn tight over 2 white teeth. But its expression is not monstrous. It is grief-stricken. The creature approaches Victor's body with a tenderness that seems impossible for something so massive. It stands over its creator, looking down at the still face, and something that might be a sob escapes from its throat. "Do you think I was glad to make him suffer?" the creature says, its voice rough with emotion. "Do you think I took pleasure in the destruction of everything he loved?" Walton cannot speak. He is frozen with fear and wonder, witnessing something he could never have imagined. "He was my father," the creature continues. "He made me. He gave me life. And then he abandoned me, cast me out into a world that hated me on sight. He made me a monster. And then he was surprised when I acted like one." The creature reaches out and touches Victor's face. "I wanted only love, only acceptance, only a place in the world, however small, where I could exist without fear and hatred. Was that so much to ask? Was that worth the suffering I endured?" It turns to face Walton. "You have heard his story. You know what he created and what he did to me. Judge for yourself which of us is the true monster." Walton finds his voice. "He was wrong to abandon you," he says slowly. "But you were wrong to kill. The boy, the woman, his friend, his bride. They did nothing to deserve death." The creature bows its head. "I know. Do you think I do not know? The boy's face haunts me still. They all haunt me. I cannot escape them, even in sleep." It looks again at Victor's body. "But he haunts me most of all. He who gave me life and then tried to take it away. He who promised me a companion and then destroyed her before my eyes. He who made me capable of feeling love and then ensured that I would never know it." The creature turns away. "I am the last of my kind. There will be no more like me. When I die, this experiment ends." "What will you do?" Walton asks. The creature pauses at the door. "I will go north, to the very top of the world, where the ice is endless and no human will ever find me. I will build a funeral pyre and set it alight. I will end my miserable existence in flames, just as my unhappy creator began his with a bolt of lightning. Do not weep for me. I deserve no tears. I have done terrible things, and I will pay for them with my own annihilation. But remember this, I was not born a monster. I was made one. By my creator. By a world that judged me before it knew me. By the cruelty of beings who called themselves good. Perhaps, in some future age when humanity has grown wiser, there will be room for creatures like me. Perhaps children will be judged by their souls, not their faces. Perhaps the ugly and the strange will be welcomed as brothers and sisters rather than driven out as demons. I will not live to see that day. But perhaps, if you tell this story, others will. And perhaps something good will come from all this suffering. After all, the creature leaps through the cabin window and lands on the ice. Walton rushes to the opening and watches as it runs across the frozen sea, its massive form growing smaller and smaller until it is swallowed by the darkness. He never sees it again. Chapter 11. The Wedding Night. The wedding takes place in Geneva, in the church where generations of Frankensteins have celebrated their unions. Elizabeth is radiant in white. Victor wears the expression of a man walking to his own execution. He cannot shake the creature's threat from his mind. Every shadow seems to hide the monster. Every unexpected sound makes him flinch. But he says the words. He makes the vows. He places the ring on Elizabeth's finger and accepts her as his wife. Perhaps he is wrong. Perhaps the creature's threat was empty. Perhaps this will truly be the beginning of a new life, a happy life, a life free from the horrors of the past. They travel to a villa on the shores of Lake Como for their honeymoon. The setting is beautiful beyond description. Mountains rise from the still waters. Gardens bloom with flowers in every color. The air is warm and fragrant, filled with the sounds of birdsong and the gentle lapping of waves. Victor tries to relax, tries to believe that everything will be all right. But as the sun sets and darkness falls over the lake, his fear returns. He insists that Elizabeth retire to their room while he patrols the villa. He arms himself with pistols and walks through the grounds, peering into every shadow, ready for the attack he knows is coming. Hours pass. Nothing happens. Victor begins to wonder if he was wrong. Perhaps the creature meant something else. Perhaps it was bluffing. Perhaps a scream. Elizabeth's scream. Victor races back to the villa, his heart pounding, his blood cold with terror. He bursts through the door of their room. Elizabeth lies across the bed, her white wedding dress spread around her like the petals of a dying flower. Her eyes are open, staring at nothing. Her throat bears the marks of enormous fingers. She is dead. Victor collapses beside her, taking her body in his arms, screaming her name, begging her to wake up. And then, he sees it. The creature is at the window, watching. Its face is twisted into something that might be a smile. It points at Victor, a gesture of triumph and mockery, and then it vanishes into the night. Victor fires his pistols into the darkness, but the bullets find nothing. The creature is gone, and Elizabeth is dead. The news of Elizabeth's death destroys what remains of Victor's father. Victor Frankenstein has already buried his wife and his youngest son. He has watched his family crumble, piece by piece. This final blow is too much. Within days of Elizabeth's murder, Victor Frankenstein dies of a broken heart. Victor is alone now. Everyone he loved is dead. Everything he cared about is gone. The creature has won. But Victor does not give up. Instead, he makes a new vow. He will hunt the creature to the ends of the earth. He will pursue it across continents and oceans, through deserts and mountains, into the very heart of darkness if necessary. He will not rest, will not stop, will not falter until the monster is destroyed. This is no longer about revenge. It is no longer about justice. It is about ending the horror. Finishing what he started, destroying the abomination he brought into the world. Victor sets out on his final journey. Chapter 12, The Pursuit. The hunt leads Victor across Europe. He follows the creature's trail through cities and villages, through forests and farmland. Sometimes he catches glimpses of his quarry in the distance. Sometimes he finds signs of its passage, enormous footprints, terrified witnesses, the occasional body left behind as a message. The creature is always ahead of him, always just out of reach, always moving. It is playing with Victor, he realizes, toying with him, leading him on a chase that has no end. But Victor will not stop. He has nothing left to lose. His family is dead. His friends are dead. His career, his reputation, his sanity, all gone. There is only the pursuit, the endless pursuit, the single-minded determination to catch the monster and destroy it. The trail leads north, through the Baltic states, through Scandinavia, into the frozen wastes of Russia, where the snow stretches to the horizon and the cold bites through the thickest firs. Victor follows. He buys a sledge and a team of dogs. He wraps himself in layers of clothing that barely keep him alive. He eats when he can, sleeps when he must, but never stops for long. Always forward, always north. The creature seems to be leading him somewhere. To the very edge of the world, perhaps. To the frozen sea where the ice stretches unbroken to the pole. Victor follows. He finds messages left for him, carved into trees or scratched into rocks. "Follow me," one reads. "I seek the everlasting ices of the north, where you will feel the misery of cold and frost, to which I am impassive." Another says, "Come on, my enemy. We have yet to wrestle for our lives, but many hard and miserable hours must you endure until that period shall arrive." The creature is taunting him, daring him, ensuring that the chase continues. Victor follows. The cold grows more intense with every passing day. The sun barely rises above the horizon. The ice is a wilderness of ridges and crevasses, treacherous and unforgiving. Victor's dogs begin to die. First one, then another. He cuts them from the harness and leaves them where they fall, continuing with what remains of his team. His supplies dwindle. His strength fades. His body is breaking down, succumbing to the cold and the exhaustion and the impossible demands of the pursuit. But Victor will not stop. He cannot stop. And then, one day, he sees the creature. It is on the ice ahead, a dark figure against the white expanse, moving with that impossible speed. Victor whips his remaining dogs forward, urging them to greater effort. The gap begins to close. But the ice is treacherous. A crack appears, running between Victor and his quarry. The ice shifts and groans. The crack widens, becoming a channel of black water that grows larger with every passing second. The creature leaps across. Victor cannot follow. He is stranded on an ice floe, drifting further and further from his enemy. The creature stops on the far side of the widening gap. It watches Victor with those pale, watery eyes, and then it turns and walks away, disappearing into the frozen wilderness. Victor is left alone on the ice, dying, defeated, his life's purpose slipping away like the warmth from his failing body. He does not know how long he drifts. Days, perhaps. Weeks. Time loses meaning in the endless white. His dogs are all dead now. His supplies are gone. He lies on the ice, too weak to move, waiting for the end. And that is when the ship appears. Chapter 13. The Stranger on the Ice. The ship is a marvel of human engineering, a vessel designed for Arctic exploration, carrying a crew of brave men seeking a passage through the ice to the northern seas. Its captain is Robert Walton, a young man driven by ambition and curiosity, determined to make discoveries that will earn him a place in history. Walton sees the figure on the ice from the deck of his ship. At first, he thinks it is a mirage. The Arctic plays tricks on the mind. But as the ship draws closer, he realizes that it is real. A man, barely alive, stranded on an ice floe that is slowly breaking apart. Walton orders his crew to rescue the stranger. They bring him aboard with great difficulty. He is nearly frozen, barely conscious, more dead than alive. The ship's doctor does what he can, but he is not optimistic. Yet the stranger recovers. Slowly, painfully, he returns from the edge of death. His eyes open, his lips move. He asks, in a voice rough with disuse, a single question. "The man on the sledge, the one you saw crossing the ice, where did he go?" Walton is puzzled. He did indeed see another figure on the ice, a large man traveling by sledge at tremendous speed. The crew pointed him out before they spotted the dying stranger. "North," Walton replies. "We saw him heading north, across the ice fields." The stranger tries to rise. "Then I must follow," he says. "Give me food and rest, and I will take your smaller boat. I will continue the pursuit." Walton is astonished by this display of determination. The stranger is clearly dying. His body is broken, his mind is fevered, his chances of survival almost non-existent. Yet he speaks of continuing his pursuit as if it is the only thing that matters. "You cannot survive on the ice," Walton says. "You are too weak. The journey would kill you." "Then let it kill me," the stranger replies. "I have nothing left to lose." Walton sits with the stranger, nursing him, listening to his ravings. Over the following days, as the stranger's strength slowly returns, Walton begins to draw out his story. The stranger's name is Victor Frankenstein. He is a scientist, or was, a creator, a man who reached for powers beyond human understanding and paid the price for his hubris. He has a tale to tell. Walton listens with growing horror as Victor recounts everything: the university, the obsession, the creation, the murders, the pursuit. Victor holds nothing back. He speaks of his guilt, his shame, his desperate hope that by destroying the creature, he might somehow atone for all the evil he has caused. "Learn from my mistakes," Victor says. "You seek glory, Captain. You seek to push beyond the boundaries of the known world. But there are boundaries that should not be crossed. There are some secrets that are better left undiscovered." Walton is shaken. Victor's tale is like a dark mirror reflecting his own ambitions back at him in distorted and frightening forms. "What happened to the creature?" Walton asks. Victor shakes his head. "I do not know. It is out there still, somewhere on the ice. And I must find it. I must finish what I started." But Victor is too weak. His body has endured too much. Despite all his determination, he cannot rise from the bed where Walton's crew has placed him. Victor Frankenstein dies. It happens quietly, in the small hours of the night. Walton is sitting beside him, half asleep, when he realizes that the stranger's labored breathing has stopped. He checks for a pulse. There is none. Victor Frankenstein is dead. Walton sits in silence, mourning a man he has known for only a few weeks, but has come to understand more deeply than most of his oldest friends. And then he hears a sound. A creaking of timbers, the brush of something moving through the ship, footsteps, impossibly heavy, approaching the cabin. Walton turns. The creature is standing in the doorway. Chapter 14. The Final Visit. It is enormous, 8 feet tall, perhaps more, its body filling the narrow passage. Its face is a horror of yellow skin and watery eyes and black lips drawn tight over 2 white teeth. But its expression is not monstrous. It is grief-stricken. The creature approaches Victor's body with a tenderness that seems impossible for something so massive. It stands over its creator, looking down at the still face, and something that might be a sob escapes from its throat. "Do you think I was glad to make him suffer?" the creature says, its voice rough with emotion. "Do you think I took pleasure in the destruction of everything he loved?" Walton cannot speak. He is frozen with fear and wonder, witnessing something he could never have imagined. "He was my father," the creature continues. "He made me. He gave me life. And then he abandoned me, cast me out into a world that hated me on sight. He made me a monster. And then he was surprised when I acted like one." The creature reaches out and touches Victor's face. "I wanted only love, only acceptance, only a place in the world, however small, where I could exist without fear and hatred. Was that so much to ask? Was that worth the suffering I endured?" It turns to face Walton. "You have heard his story. You know what he created and what he did to me. Judge for yourself which of us is the true monster." Walton finds his voice. "He was wrong to abandon you," he says slowly. "But you were wrong to kill. The boy, the woman, his friend, his bride. They did nothing to deserve death." The creature bows its head. "I know. Do you think I do not know? The boy's face haunts me still. They all haunt me. I cannot escape them, even in sleep." It looks again at Victor's body. but he haunts me most of all. He who gave me life and then tried to take it away. He who promised me a companion and then destroyed her before my eyes. He who made me capable of feeling love and then ensured that I would never know it. The creature turns away. I am the last of my kind. There will be no more like me. When I die, this experiment ends. What will you do? Walton asks. The creature pauses at the door. I will go north, to the very top of the world, where the ice is endless and no human will ever find me. I will build a funeral pyre and set it alight. I will end my miserable existence in flames, just as my unhappy creator began his with a bolt of lightning. Do not weep for me. I deserve no tears. I have done terrible things, and I will pay for them with my own annihilation. But remember this, I was not born a monster. I was made one. By my creator. By a world that judged me before it knew me. By the cruelty of beings who called themselves good. Perhaps, in some future age when humanity has grown wiser, there will be room for creatures like me. Perhaps children will be judged by their souls, not their faces. Perhaps the ugly and the strange will be welcomed as brothers and sisters rather than driven out as demons. I will not live to see that day. But perhaps, if you tell this story, others will. And perhaps something good will come from all this suffering. After all, the creature leaps through the cabin window and lands on the ice. Walton rushes to the opening and watches as it runs across the frozen sea, its massive form growing smaller and smaller until it is swallowed by the darkness. He never sees it again. Chapter 15. The End of the Tale. Robert Walton turns his ship south. The Arctic has defeated him just as it defeated the stranger he pulled from the ice. The passage he sought does not exist, or if it does, it lies beyond what any ship can reach. His crew is relieved. They had grown afraid in these frozen waters, haunted by strange sights and stranger stories. They are glad to be going home. Walton is changed. He will never be the same man who set out on this voyage, burning with ambition, certain that glory awaited him at the top of the world. Victor Frankenstein's tale has shaken something fundamental in him. There are limits, Walton writes in his journal. There are boundaries that should not be crossed, regardless of what might be gained. Victor crossed those boundaries, and the price he paid was beyond calculation. I will not make his mistake. He records everything Victor told him, every detail of the story. He writes of the university and the laboratory, of the creation and the murders, of the long pursuit across the frozen wastes. He writes of the creature's final visit, its grief and its guilt, its promise to end itself in flames at the top of the world. And he writes of the questions that Victor's story raises. What is life? What is death? What do we owe to those we bring into the world? These questions have no easy answers. Perhaps they have no answers at all. But they matter. They matter more than any discovery, any glory, any triumph of human ambition. The ship sails south, the ice recedes, the sun grows warmer, and somewhere in the frozen north, on a pyre of driftwood and ice, a creature unlike any other burns to ash, taking with it the last evidence of Victor Frankenstein's great and terrible experiment. The monster is gone. The creator is gone. Only the story remains. Epilogue, after the flames. What became of the creature's body, no one knows. Perhaps it burned completely, as the creature intended. Perhaps the flames consumed every trace of Victor's handiwork, leaving nothing but ash to blow across the endless ice. Or perhaps something remained. A bone, a tooth, a fragment of that strange yellow skin, buried in the snow waiting to be discovered by some future explorer who will marvel at what he has found and wonder what it means. The world turned. Years passed. Decades. Centuries. The story that Robert Walton recorded was published, eventually. It became famous, then notorious, then famous again. Readers argued about its meaning. Scholars dissected its themes. Adaptations transformed it, sometimes beyond recognition. But the heart of the tale remained the same. A man reached for power beyond his understanding. He created something wonderful and terrible. He abandoned his creation, and catastrophe followed. It is a story about ambition and hubris, about the responsibility that comes with creation, about what happens when we bring something into the world and then refuse to care for it. But it is also a story about loneliness. The creature was alone from the moment of its birth, alone in a world that hated and feared it, alone with questions that had no answers and longings that could never be satisfied. Victor was alone too, in the end, alone with his guilt and his grief and his endless pursuit. He had family, friends, a bride who loved him, but he drove them all away, one by one, until there was nothing left but the hunt. And Walton was alone on his ship, surrounded by crew but connected to none of them, driven by dreams that led him to the edge of the world and no further. Perhaps that is the deepest truth of this tale, that we are all alone in some fundamental way, that we reach out for connection and understanding, but the gap between one soul and another can never be fully bridged. Or perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps the tragedy of Victor and his creature is precisely that they could have bridged that gap, creator and creation, father and son, but chose not to. Perhaps the loneliness was not inevitable. Perhaps it was a choice, made again and again, until it became inescapable. Perhaps with a little more compassion, a little more courage, a little more willingness to see the soul beneath the skin, everything could have been different. Perhaps. The ice remains. The Arctic Sea continues its eternal dance of freeze and thaw. The northern lights still flicker across the winter sky. The stars still wheel overhead, indifferent to the dramas played out beneath them. And somewhere in that frozen wilderness, if you listen very carefully, you might still hear an echo of that creature's final cry. A cry of grief, of guilt, of desperate, disappointed longing. A cry that fades to silence as the flames rise higher. A cry that is, in the end, terribly, achingly human. The story of Frankenstein is finished, but the questions it raises about creation and responsibility, about ambition and consequence, about what we owe to those we bring into the world, those questions are never finished. They wait for each new generation to discover them. They wait for you. Think about them, if you like, or let them drift away, dissolving into the softness of approaching sleep. The night is deep now. The world is quiet. The tale has been told, and there is nothing more to say. Let your eyes close. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts grow soft and distant, fading like the creature fading into the northern darkness. You are safe. You are warm. You are not alone. Whatever monsters may lurk in your imagination, they cannot reach you here. Whatever questions trouble your waking mind, they can wait until morning. For now, there is only rest, only peace, only the gentle descent into dreams. The creature has found its end. Victor has found his, and you are finding yours, not an end, but a pause. A moment of stillness in the endless flow of time. A few hours of forgetting, of renewal, of quiet. Sleep now. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. The ice will still be there when you wake. The stars will still turn overhead. The story will still be waiting to be told again. But for now, there is only this. The soft embrace of night, the gentle rhythm of your breath, the warmth of your bed, the safety of this moment. Rest. Dream. The night is yours. And in the morning, when you wake, the world will be waiting, bright and new and full of possibility. But that is for tomorrow. Tonight, there is only sleep. Good night.